reassurance bouncing round 100,000 times in my own echosphere. Consequently, you can keep your record clear. And if you mute the speech that shakes your frail beliefs, you only seek to insulate your image and continue down the stream in the direction clout and credit steers. Directly from your mouth into am I the asshole Reddit's ears. Directly back into the greasy pockets of some Gates Foundation financiers. And then directly back into the frantic final thoughts of early trial Neuralink volunteers, staring at the numb and mumbling vacancies where recently had been their peers. Half of whom are glitching with the memory stuck on pause, and half have zero fucking clue just who they are or why they're here. It's been said that fear is all we have to fear. But that was back before the Bezos fear condenser came along, distilling concentrated fear that's diamond pure, crystal clear, oppressor strong, and woven into every single article you read and song they let you hear. And then Elon heard that Jeff enhanced our fears by 86%, and he said, hold my beer. And not a single sheep among the herd would turn their head or say a word, cause they were all too busy begging for the shears, begging for the muzzle, happy just to guzzle, feed, and watch a screen for all their years. Man, to each his own, can't afford a home, but they'll let you have your cozy little ecosphere. Where there among your own devices you can break the seventh seal, overthrow the oracles and slay the seer. All the tomes were burned and all the lips were seared. Shut your eyes and all our lives just disappear. Now blink 'em twice. Welcome to your ecosphere. Of the free, and you'll know us by the trail of dead. It's just one more world war to complete the set. When you live by the pike, you die by the pith. You die wide-eyed, still pleading the fifth, or crying divine epithets and pathetic attempts at defense. All empathetic for those on your side of the fence. Well, I'll gladly put you and your legacy into an alternate tense of faltering senses and altered events. Like hun, it ain't a hearse, it's a reaper's stretch. How sweet, she said, bunch of hordes in the street like it's Evil Dead. Where the thin blue line meets razor's edge, and where the corporate ladder ascends to a steel-toed boot that awaits on the ledge. You'll be licking it fresh at your boss's request till it stomps each finger and watches you fall to your death and drown in an ocean of debt. Gone with the fodder who gathered to honor the patient left, who purity tested themselves into sections, step by step till the next election, when it's just one them and the sound of their well-read theorized breath. That's harm reduction for the lowly cost of you holding your nose and just openly buying the theft. Maybe that's all in the flick of the pen. Maybe we're all one unmarked van from a trip to the pen, being guarded by pigs who exist on a diet of dying breaths of much worthier men. Honey, heaven's expecting you. Just don't get too hung up on who they let in. Just look up at the shine of the pearly gates. You don't need to worry if there's lead in the paint. You don't need to worry if there's lead in the water, lead in the milk, lead in the honey, lead in the caustic embrace of the Heavenly Father. Lead is the flavor of passive perpetual slaughter. Lead is the taste of us led to the ledge by the lure of the legend of expert consensus, and then beckon to stretch it just one step farther. And I hope all the folks who were boastfully gloating and toasting themselves as the heroes of COVID for boosting their boosters and doing their part are now equally thrilled to be starstruck martyrs, all laid in a government grave with anonymous markers, like you're back from the carvers and off to the splicer. You're the very first wave to be slain in the war against Pfizer. That 100 years war against Pfizer. They are thinning the crowd that is striking right now to bleed adequate pay from those inhuman misers who all sit in their office and designate coffins to people regarded as nothing but profit for Kaiser. Still the Dems want you nicer. Dems want you softer. Dems want you kinder. Yeah, they all want you graciously starving in silence. You will speak when you're spoken to. Rest of the time, you and all of us peasants are merely depressing statistics neglected in Congress's binders. All bled, bone dry, then fed to the grinder. Our headstones line each step as reminders. That's a lesson in object permanence learned in the furnace by workers consigned to the fire. Workers bled, bone dry, then fed by the fed to the grinder. Fed by the fed to the grinder. Now the fed went straight to your head. Mind what you hide and your size unsaid, and your eyes turn blind to the signs unread. Flag bright red, so you let it in bed. You let it inside and you'll see that it's fed. Never you mind that it grinds your wealth into bread for itself, then it bleeds you dry, then it dines on the dead. Now the fed went straight to your head. Mind what you hide and your size unsaid, and your eyes turn blind to the signs unread. Flag bright red, so you let it in bed. You let it inside and you'll see that it's fed. Never you mind that it grinds your wealth into bread for itself, then it bleeds you dry, then it dines on the dead. And the fed went straight to your head. Mind what you hide and your size unsaid, and your eyes turn blind to the signs unread. Flag bright red, so you let it in bed. You let it inside, you'll see that it's fed. Never you mind that it grinds your wealth into bread for itself, bleeds you dry, then dines on the dead. The fed went straight to your head. Mind what you hide and your size unsaid, and your eyes turn blind to the signs unread. Flag bright red, so you let it in bed. You let it inside and you'll see that it's fed. Never you mind that it grinds your wealth into bread for itself, then it bleeds you dry, then it dines on the dead. Here's where our leaders would see us all led. Here's where our leaders would see us all led. Here's where our leaders would see us all led. Here's where our leaders would see us all led. The fed went straight to your head. Mind what you hide and your size unsaid, and your eyes turn blind to the signs unread. Flag bright red, so you let it in bed. You let it inside, you'll see that it's fed. Never you'll mind that it grinds your wealth into bread for itself, then it bleeds you dry, then it dines on the dead. The fed went straight to your head. Mind what you hide and your size unsaid, and your eyes turn blind to the signs unread. Flag bright red, so you let it in bed. You let it inside, you'll see that it's fed. Never you'll mind that it grinds your mind, that it grinds yourself, then it bleeds you dry, then it dines on the dead. Here's where our leaders would see us all led.
That's how it goes. We won't open our eyes, so we're the last ones to know. We're the last ones alive. Kept our enemies close. Wondered why we don't thrive while we're grasping at ghosts. Counting backwards from 5. Counting backwards from 5. Counting backwards from 5.
Count back from 5. The theater on fire, the cast on strike. The studio stock starts taking a dive. The contract's tossed and they're gone with the tide. The heads and execs, their hands are tied. We can't pump this track and treat you right. But what do you expect from the industry type who survive by the leeching of bodies and minds? From those who original thoughts never seem to find. So they're gonna reboot ALF before your wages rise. And it gives cause to pause and reflect on the times. If they're losing control of their fools and their mimes, when all those obedient actors who grew their careers by averting their eyes are now holding the line, along with the authors of countless scripts that strengthen the hand of that corporate grip, squeezing our throats till we take the pen and we accept and consent to the corporate drip, till you're all up to date on your pharma du jour, till you got a healthy support for the war on your lips. And now you know that the advertisers need more than a rerun summer full of flashback clips. Enter the scans from the year before, all the days of de-aging and mapping the face, and the hours of actors recording their voices are links in the chains that will bind them in place. Now all of those shows are so easy to make. When they got a drone they control that needs no break, it can bend, it can break, and it's cheaply replaced enough up-to-date films all in one take. And those studios bank on us doing our duty, unhinging our jaws and digesting the fakes, because they know that we'll love how synthetic it tastes. Watch as they edit your features without any trace. Not that there's anything you could do anyway. Now watch as they show you a movie you used saying shit you would never say. Dystopia boldly accelerates. Maybe you're only a mold, something to fill with a clone, something that Elon would celebrate. Something they own, something they program and code, something that's woefully able to know it's exanimate. Because it doesn't feel touch over top of the laminate. You will not feel an emotion, but they will not scan and examine it. You and the other consumer contaminants fed on the federal diet of Kiev, Havana, and Tiananmen. I can't be the only one weighing the pros of abandonment. I can't be the only one weighing the pros of abandonment.
Where did you think we'd go? Love, there's nowhere to lie. Guess it's not who you know, more it's what you can hide. Like we're chained to the floor, they're streaming us live while we're watching the war, counting backwards from 5, counting backwards from 5, counting backwards from 5.
Said, thank you, Obama, for life in the red. Thank you for DAP and a pat on the head. Thank you for saving the banks, as millions are drowning their debt. Thank you for all of the fluff and the nothing you said. Thank you for proving we eat up identity politics. All of your policy better forgotten, just tell us what books you read. Tell us what record was top of your playlist, turning a wedding to Day of the Dead. What Quavo song went along on a heavy rotation, bombing Iraqis in bed? When they told you that 90% of your kills are civilian, what Jill Scott chorus was stuck in your head? What put you at rest after such a long day of convincing a nation it wasn't so deeply misled, that you weren't just Reagan with New Age media training, who fed on our hopes like his daily bread, who preyed on the weak, who was never unwilling to serve you a speech to remind you the middle class needed to bleed, and you helped us succeed if you learned to accept it, and better yet learn how to laugh as they bled. Round of applause, laughter erupts, mic gets dropped, it's the end of his set. And the crowd once hungry are now unstunned from the glow of celebrity, which is impressive, especially since they're contented to sit and be civil while all of the donors are fed. They thin out the herd by 1 million a week if it gives the elite an illusion of peace, like they're out of the path of the future we reap, and they won't be debris in the wake of its tread. But the future is now, bathe in the sound, drown in the dread. Hide in the lounge, hire more guards at your gatehouse. Hire someone to come build you a safe house under your shed. Hide with your diamonds and files, the files you keep to yourself and the files you keep for the feds. Hide in the dark for a while and watch all the value regress. Watch all the worth of your wealth on this earth melt down in a pool with the rest of the cess. The affluence left over after the worldly collapse of the affluent. After it's back to the dirt with the rights of their birth, privileged smirks and their unpaid taxes, #blast. This has all been a nightmare, capitalism was only a test. So you need not weep and you need not repeat what the liberals said. We will not be saved by people who say that the water is safe while they look in your face and they pantomime sips of lead. Honey, nobody's lifting us out of this mess.
Awake. I know they wrapped you in the warmest chains, and I know they're so hard to break. You only said what you were made to say. I can't imagine how you feel today, now that you're watching as it caves away. While you were telling us to keep the faith, I bet you wondered why they made you wait. I bet you wondered why they made you wait.
Pity not the vultures, they've enough to eat. Pity not the structures laying at your feet. Cannot see the sky, but there's this rainbow in the creek that spells pity-free speech when we can't afford to speak. That's Agenda 2030 on some early release. It's just our policy of never-ending chemical leaks. That's the cholera awash in your embedded beliefs. It's the billionaires who tell you what you'd better believe. And sugar, if you don't agree, then that's what we call extreme. Now if that isn't fascism...
There's a difference between peace and liberation, is there not? You can have injustice and have peace. Isn't that correct? Have peace and be enslaved.
Yes.
So peace isn't the answer.
No.
Liberation is the answer.
Real enemies of my people are right here, not in Vietnam. No, I will not go 10,000 miles from here to help murder and kill another poor people simply to continue the domination of white slave masters.
The greatest jab of all time, Muhammad Ali. Nope. Yep. He was definitely outspoken at not going to that war. He was like, nah, fuck you. I ain't doing that shit.
Yeah, I saw that clip on Instagram. I think it was Monday. And considering what has popped off within the last 48 hours, I think it was very appropriate.
Well, he went.
I think that's a common sense.
He went to Lebanon and, like, he went all those places. You know,
well, I think
spoke to the people.
Thing is that, you know, like, people, well, it was a lot harder to travel back then, but people did. Well, Ali was a boxer, so he had to. So, but he was able to see some shit. So he's able to have that perspective and kind of seeing like how imperialism was affecting the global South. And that kind of was the thing, among other things, that shaped his worldview into the way he kind of became an activist later. And while he was, you know, essentially kind of blackballed even in the sports world. So it's funny how, you know, once you become more radicalized, how the powers that be suppress you or try to.
Well, and they called him a draft dodger, and they fucking accused him of all sorts of shit, especially when he switched his religion.
Meanwhile, we have a current president who also did the same shit that doesn't get
worse. Worse.
Been called out enough for dodging the draft as well. But I guess it's easier when you're rich. Versus being the N-word, that you are, you know, like, we're still considered, in my mind, still considered property in this country. So yeah, why not send a black man to war and let the rich, spoiled, demented idiot who's now currently has the power to nuke the world, you know, be in charge. So, but that's the state of affairs where we're at. But anyway, welcome to INN News, episode 191. I'm your host, Collin Radix-Carter. Next to me is my co-host, tech advisor. I would argue everything technical that I don't give a fuck with or care about, he knows generally.
Try to.
Reef Breland, how are you, Reef?
I'm doing all right. Sore everywhere, but what else is new? You know? But anyway, how you holding up, dude? DC still together?
What's that?
You know, DC still together. The cherry trees blooming. I
think the cherry trees have been blooming.
Blooming.
It's been like past. It's been past peak now for like nearly 2 weeks. So I'm sure there's pretty much every cherry blossom now is gone. And then we had like a cold snap last night. So that probably, I wouldn't say
everything's trying to bloom prematurely. Anyway. Right. No, it sucks that you don't
on time. No, they were blooming on time, more or less, because we had a few warm days toward the end of March, so that kind of helped things along. And then we had a cold snap last night, which I'm sure kind of put probably a pause on a lot of stuff right now, at least the flora in the area right now. But it's supposed to warm up again. It's supposed to be gorgeous next week, at least in the beginning of the week. So
interesting, auspicious. Ali failed the admissibility test, got an F rating after he won the WBC belt and changed his name to Muhammad Ali. Army reclassified him 1A without retesting him. So they were on the fuck shit back then too, trying to like make him a draft dodger essentially, you know?
Right.
But
which is not surprising.
No. Nope.
Indy said, I just confirmed that we're on with Jesse
for tomorrow night.
Tomorrow night. So great.
Sounds like a fun time.
So definitely check out American Tradition tomorrow night with Indy and Jesse. But we got some stories this week. I mean, I don't think I at least was necessarily planning for the stories. I kind of had them on the ready early in the week.
Yep.
Kind of knew what I was doing, and then everything kind of blew up to like to kind of fit everything that we were going to talk about tonight. So very appropriate. I picked these stories. But obviously, I'm not going to go into the ceasefire at all, really. But you guys probably know by
I
now
got that.
well, okay. So you're probably going to take that, I think, in terms
Yep.
of your story, I guess. But
Yes, sir.
so at least we can kind of get into more of the specifics, given the energy, what will be the energy crisis in Iran right now, and how Trump basically has fucked us over pretty much. I would argue probably to the end of time, especially now, given he broke the he and with like the hand of Israel basically broke the ceasefire within 2 seconds, of course.
Yep.
So so now Iran's like, fuck that shit, we're closing the strait. So great. So expect your gas to go up, expect your food to go up, expect any travel that you might take over the summer to go way up. And you know, the sad thing is we haven't even hit rock bottom yet, but probably wait within the next month or so, and things will start getting dire for at least some certain people, or at least
Tactical nuke incoming!
Yeah. Although I will admit, like through all of this, I was kind of thinking this might become like Evangelion in real life. Still might.
Sure. Couple
Those of
gods
you
to
who
kill
watched,
left.
right? Those of you who watch at least good anime, you know, in my mind, greatest anime of all time, in my opinion. But I digress. Anyway, so we're going to talk about how this global crisis is basically going to affect the Middle East as well as us. And then later on tonight, we're going to talk about the Christian MAGA guys who are kind of dog walking Trump into heading into Iran. And shout out to Reef for creating this thumbnail. I basically said I wanted Crusade, like a modern day version of the Crusades, because this is exactly what this reminds me of.
Yep.
And essentially, like for the program that you used, it basically depicted, I think Pete, I said pig, but same difference, as a very generic white guy, which fits.
White guy with all sliders set to the middle. Just standard white dude.
Standard white, run of the mill, all American, I guess you could say, dude. So it fits. So we are going to talk about the Christian MAGA influence and how they're shit. And then what did you bring?
Well, I brought. Have you heard about Kharg Island near the Hormuz Strait? Has that come up in
only because from the murmurings that I've been hearing in some mainstream media, they talked about it, or like mentioned it, but like no specifics as usual. So I'm sure you're going to go into more of that in depth,
especially with how the ceasefire is playing out. Yeah, it's not even a thing now, right? Already, what, it lasted a fucking day.
No.
So not even
a day. Not even.
Yeah. So we'll get into that. I had stuff tacked on from yesterday that I'm already going to have to addend in that story. So, but it's a big, like, you know, specific location that is super important to controlling that bit of water, as well as oil refineries. You know, we're there for the oil. We're there. We're going to take all. It's the best oil. People tell me. And so we're going to go into that nonsense. But in the southern hemisphere, Ibrahim Traore, leader of Burkina Faso, right? What's his president official title? I think President Ibrahim Traore.
Oh, sure.
You know, something like that.
Sure. Something
But
like that, yeah.
he declared he got rid of all political parties, and he said no democracy in the French accent that he pulls out. And we're gonna go into the specifics of that, what that might actually mean, and you know,
Right.
Western powers
I
are
think
gonna
this is important.
fucking
Right, because
try
I
to brand
think
this too.
obviously, if you take it what he said as face value, obviously people in the West are going to be like, "What the fuck does he mean by that?" Like he's going to become a dictator, like whatever else. Which, to be fair, given I'm not saying, and like I'm going to be very fair. As much good as we have mentioned about Traore in the past, I think I've also been kind of cautious and you and I been cautious in terms of giving him our full, like, we're not giving him all gold stars here. Like, there's still enough nuance. There's still a lot that we do not know about him, especially in terms of his intentions and everything. Given that, there is perspectives that I just brought in before we went live that I think is worth talking about that might be part of influence as to what he means by this, that I'm sure no one else in our space or even definitely in mainstream media will not say. So I did want to kind of bring that up as far as giving some context. Possibly. That's not to say that's where he's thinking, though. So I will preface by saying that.
And
I think it's still
we'll definitely be watching that shit down there. I know a lot of the online discourse is like for and against, you know, like pretty much. I've not seen really any middle zone on that. So,
right.
But Western news is definitely going to fucking manipulate that story for sure. So
if they are talking about it, which I don't think they are. So,
yeah.
But that's why you guys watch us. And then I did bring an extra story. Shout out to Indy for bringing this to me because it involves kids, and we all know how I live the kids. Not like, but but anything dealing with kids, I'm passionate about. So we are going to talk about how our illegal war, is affecting children in Gaza and Iran. I think it's a worthwhile of a read. Obviously, to think about the rest of these who have no power whatsoever, how they're being affected. And we talk about our country being a country of universal human rights. Republican Party talks about they're the party of family values, and yet you're deliberately killing brown children in the global South in the name of exploitation, imperialism, and colonialism. So, so yeah, we're going to talk about that toward the end of the show. But anyway,
before we get started with that, as always, YouTube hates us and has shadow banned us to hell, and they think that they get to take 30% of our cash because they do that anyway. So if you want to get around that system,
I will say this.
Yes.
I've been obviously this is my network. So I've been I will say within probably the last month, I've seen some of our content being pushed from my algorithm.
Hey, Jack's Page. Another $5. She's so generous to us. We appreciate you so much. Collin is a bit low in volume compared to Reef. I can fix that. That's probably my fault.
Thank you, Jack, for checking in with us, but thank you.
Yep.
But you can do what Jax did. If you want all of our money to ensure that all of your money goes towards the benefit of our network in terms of, one, paying for our programming that we use to produce these shows. Number two, any extra money that we do get to support our colleagues in tech that they need. Free, if we have anything extra beyond that, being able to support hopefully other organizations or other creators who are looking to get into this. We're not at that stage yet, but hopefully one day we want to be able to do that. So if you care to donate, and then we always say take care of yourselves first, especially right now. We know gas is a bitch to pay for right now, so obviously money is tight. But if you do have the means to, you can scan the Ko-fi link that you see on your screen, well, the QR code, or you can go to the Ko-fi link that you see at the bottom of your screen and type that in. If you're in the YouTube chat and live, watching us live, you can type in !donate, all one word, and the Ko-fi link will pop up, and you can donate right in the link. Anything as low as $1 will help. And as Jax gave 5, again, we'll take any amount that you can give or spare. So we really appreciate that. And if you want to give monthly, or if you want to give in other ways, you can go to our description. As always, you can give through PayPal, Cash App, Patreon, Substack, especially if you want to give to us monthly. Those are the easiest ways to do that. And anyone who gives at any point will go to our Wall of Fame. Everyone who gives generously is highlighted, and your names will be listed in the closing credits as an extra thank you, which we did update apparently. So you can check out if your name is highlighted in the page, you will see your name in the closing credits now. So great job, Reef, for getting that done. Sorry, you did mention you did it, but I didn't even notice it. So.
Yeah, fine. Whatever's.
So, but again, thank you guys for giving, especially during these times when we know things might be tough for some of you all, but we really appreciate you supporting us in whatever way you can. So thank you.
Yes, sir. All right, to our first one.
All right. So as I said, this has kind of been a developing story, like especially within the last 48 hours, given, Trump basically declared genocide. Everyone started freaking out, which, as an aside, can I just say, I think it's very funny how, especially among the liberals, that when he declared genocide, everyone's like, oh, he's going to commit a genocide right now, or whatever. But when it comes to Gaza, that's kind of quote unquote a debate as to whether that's a genocide or not.
Right.
I find that kind of interesting. So because Trump determines will had the possibility of determining, with one fell swoop to annihilate a nation, that's clear, yes, but then like a slow burn of a genocide that's happening in Gaza, we're having a debate over. I think that's kind of interesting, kind of the comparison between the two, but I digress. But anyway, so given that Trump basically declared homicide, people started freaking out, and he tacoed, but I feel that he might have done that not necessarily on purpose, but kind of intentionally to, by Israel's call, just so that they're able to continue to bomb the shit in Iran and Lebanon. But regardless, now because the United States has basically said, fuck this ceasefire. Now, Iran is basically like, okay, well, fuck you having access to Strait of Hormuz. So, so Iran has basically had the upper hand in all of this. And we'll go into why they feel empowered to do this.
Who are these people?
Thank you.
Jeff cost $5.
Another $5. So thank you for that. But shout out to Mnar Adley from MintPress News. She's the editor-in-chief of the outlet. And she reports global energy shock. Iran turns Hormuz into a toll gate challenging Petrodollar. Which, funny enough, I think she wrote this last week.
Right.
So,
yeah, April 2nd.
Given like it's been a week, huh?
April 2nd.
April 2nd. So like last Tuesday or last Monday, she wrote this, and it still holds a week later. So, but anyway, I did want to read this tweet in terms of the conditions that the U.S. agreed to in order to have this ceasefire, which it's
already gone.
Gone.
Yep.
So this is from Kabasi Letter on Twitter, who said, breaking, Iran says it has forced the U.S. to accept its 10-point plan, which includes the following terms. commitment to non-aggression, Iran's control over the Strait of Hormuz, acceptance of Iran's uranium enrichment, lifting of all primary sanctions, lifting of all secondary sanctions, termination of all UN Security Council resolutions, termination of all Board of Governors resolutions, paying compensation to Iran, reparations, withdrawal of U.S. combat forces from the region, cessation of war on all fronts, including Lebanon. Now, we know for the last one especially, they broke within, as said, within 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Trump says this plan is a workable basis, which obviously was a big fat lie because, as I said, they started bombing pretty much immediately. So let's get into the article. Iran has taken its control over the Strait of Hormuz to the next level, effectively moving towards a toll booth system on one of the world's most critical energy routes. According to Reuters, Iranian officials and lawmakers are actively considering imposing transit fees, which they're now doing, on ships passing through the strait, with proposals to charge countries for the movement of oil, gas, and even food supplies in Chinese yuan. Bluebird has further reported that vessels are increasingly being required to follow Iranian coordinated routes and protocols, signaling a shift from free navigation to controlled passage. Roughly 20% of global oil flows through Hormuz. By restricting access to Western and Gulf Arab states assisting U.S. and Israel in the war and attaching conditions to transit, Iran is not just disrupting supply, it is directly challenging the foundation of U.S. global economic dominance, the petrodollar system. This was a major underestimation by the Trump administration. Thank you. For decades, Washington's power has rested on its ability to control oil flows and ensure that energy is traded in U.S. dollars. The system has guaranteed global demand for the dollar and given the United States immense leverage over international trade. Iran's move threatens both. If oil passing through Hormuz begins shifting away from dollar-based transactions, it could accelerate the erosion of one of the key pillars of American influence. Even President Donald Trump appeared caught off guard by the scale of Iran's response. In recent remarks, he admitted he didn't think they would react this strongly, while also acknowledging that Iran has proven to be very strong under pressure. That admission points to a deeper miscalculation. The immediate consequences are already visible.
Did you hear his actual statement from that? Did you see that video with the fucking weird Easter bunny behind him?
Yes.
Where he's like, they're very strong. I didn't think they'd be that strong, but they've been very strong.
Yes.
What? Okay. But we're going to be stronger. It's like, it's just like random words to me that he spit out, Like he was just, I'll wing it. I'll figure it out,
Yeah, that's basically what he's doing. He doesn't know what to do. He doesn't want, he shit the bed and he doesn't know how to fix it. And now he's just waffling, just trying to make himself look strong when he actually isn't. And Iran basically is again, has him by the balls right now. So I don't see any way out of this, especially given how much now power Iran has. Now.
Well, so much so they were a lot of people were like, why are you even engaging with them on a ceasefire? Right.
These,
just don't continue what you're doing, so.
Well, essentially he did. So it kind of leads to me, I think I again, this is just my thought, he made that ceasefire knowing that he wasn't going to follow
it.
So
which is what we keep saying, that these ceasefires, all they do is buy America time, to either readjust or you're just allowing them field of play to me.
It's just giving, I think, the appearance that we're actually trying to do something with the idea of him nuking Iran, it's still on the table.
Oh, for sure.
It's still a possibility. It's just, I think he saw the response that people, even Republicans, were having. It's kind of like, no, what the fuck are you doing, you crazy old man? Like, that he realized, oh shit, I better save face a little bit, back off a little bit, and kind of re-enter it without the bravado that he had before.
Yeah.
I think that's what he's essentially trying to do now, under the hand of Bibi. So, but again, Iran is basically like, fuck y'all. Like, we don't need to work with you anymore. Like, you need this oil, and we will charge you tooth and nail in order to have it.
Yeah.
Because we really want to affect you by the balls here. So, and, so, and we already begin to see that. If you go to the next slide.
Yes, sir.
Because all of this shit is going to affect you guys, our family. Oil prices have surged sharply, up to $120 per barrel of oil. Like, I know for me, like in DC, you could probably tell me what it's like for you in Florida. It's like, for what I've seen, $4.19 a gallon right now in DC, on average that I've been seeing. Like, I'm actually kind of curious what it's down there for you in Florida, if you know.
I haven't looked in a bit, but it's starting to go up.
Okay.
So
yeah, let us know in the chat how much oil is for you per gallon. Kind of curious, and tell us where you're from. So I'm kind of curious to see how much oil has risen within the last few weeks. Anyway, with markets warning of further increases if disruptions continue, but the ripple effects extend far beyond fuel. Energy is embedded in nearly every sector of the global economy, from transportation and manufacturing to agriculture. So again, we've been saying this is going to affect if you're traveling by plane, especially, like anytime within the next few months, you might want to consider paying for those flights now, if you haven't already, if you could. Otherwise, prepared to them being expensive. This is going to affect food, being more expensive than they are right now. So yeah, it's going to eat into your way of life soon. I'm pretty sure, depending on where you live, I can imagine that more people are going to argue work from home, because really right now, a lot of these companies are forcing people to return to the office, at least part-time.
Right.
I'm sure now that's going to be like, people are going to be like, there's no way you're going to make me commute and having to pay for this gas. Like, I'm working from home. Like, I'm sure that's going to be happening soon, depending on the private sector, and especially if people are commuting like at least half an hour more to work every single day, by car. So, unless if they have an electric vehicle, then it wouldn't matter as much. But even with that, that's still, a price to pay. But anyway, as energy costs rise, so do the costs of producing fertilizers, transporting goods, and maintaining supply chains. The result is a cascade effect that ultimately lands on consumers, particularly through rising food prices. Analysts warn that households across Western economies could face significant increases in grocery costs, up to 20%, as these pressures build. Economist Richard Wolff has described the current moment as part of a broken historical shift away from U.S. dominance. We are witnessing the decline of an empire, Wolff has argued, pointing to Washington's growing inability to dictate global economy outcomes as it once did. That shift is being accelerated by the alignment of major global powers. China and Russia have both deepened their economic and strategic ties with Iran, forming part of a broader bloc of countries seeking alternatives to U.S.-led financial systems. This alignment strengthens the position of BRICS nations and signals a move towards a multipolar world where economic power is more widely distributed. In many countries in the global south, this represents an opportunity to reduce dependence on the dollar and gain greater control over their own economic policies. But while some stand to gain, others are being exposed. Nowhere is this more evident than in the Gulf Arab states. Countries like Saudi Arabia and the UAE have long been portrayed as pillars of wealth and stability. Yet their economic models are deeply dependent on global supply chains, imported food, and security arrangements tied to the United States. Many of these states import the vast majority of their food, in some cases as much as 80 to 90%, much of which passes through maritime routes now under threat. Any prolonged disruption to the Strait of Hormuz risks not only rising prices, but potential shortages.
Mine's up to $4 a gallon right now.
Huh?
Mine's up to $4 a gallon.
Okay.
So,
the auspicious in chat said Montreal, shout out to Montreal, has gone up to 2 gallons can per liter, which is equivalent to
$5.46 a gallon. Yeah.
Gallon shit. Yeah. At the same time, these countries host U.S. military bases and major Western corporate infrastructure, including Amazon, Cisco, HP, Oracle, Intel, Meta, and others, technology platforms that play a central role in global data and surveillance systems. Far from being neutral actors, they're also deeply embedded within the architecture of U.S. power and military warfare. What this war is revealing is the fragility beneath that system. Without stable trade flows, secure shipping routes, and external security guarantees, the foundations of these economies begin to show strain. The image of self-sustaining wealth gives way to a reality of structural dependency. This is why the stakes of the conflict extend far beyond Iran. What is unfolding is a contest over who controls the most critical levers of the global economy: energy, trade routes, and currency systems. For decades, the United States has used these levers to maintain its position at the center of the global order, but that position is now being challenged in a coordinated and increasingly effective way. The response from Washington has not been restraint, but escalation, an effort to reassert control over a system that is beginning to shift beyond its grasp. Because what is at stake is not just influence in the Middle East, it is the future of the global economic order itself. And for the first time in decades, that outcome is no longer guaranteed. So before we continue on, any thoughts?
I mean, other than the multipolar order stuff not being as I'm definitely not as hopeful for that. We've seen Russia and China not meet the needs that we really need them to in that situation. Everyone's still kind of positioning for best advantage, and whether that's with Israel or not, they're still kind of on the fence. So Iran's kind of doing this on their own. And
yeah,
I mean, they have Yemen and, a few other things have joined their fight on that. But, it's the same group of resistance that have been doing it for a while now. So,
right.
But the thing is, I definitely think Americans are more if their gas starts going up, they're I don't know,
Right.
So,
right.
Not good.
I said this on Twitter. I mean, I live in a city, and I live on the East Coast, so I can imagine if things don't change. I remember during the economic fallout in 2008, a lot of my friends bought motorbikes because gas price back then was $2, if not a little bit more, so they were buying motorbikes in order to kind of save on gas. I could well imagine by the summer, I'm going to see a lot more people getting e-bikes.
Yep.
Especially if you're in the cities or taking scooters or whatever around. That's not going to work for someone like you who lives in a rural area.
Yeah, it's not too bad.
Not too bad, but the deep south that you guys have to drive everywhere. How's that going to work for you all down there? So that's going to affect the poorer red states quite a bit. So that and food and just cost of living is going to go up.
Well, and then with everyone's fucking electrical bills going up because of the data centers, not going to be a great time economically for people, as it was like it was already. I mean, it's a war against the poor practically since fucking last 5 decades. So
Right.
Anyway,
so I brought this tweet thread. This is from @_BatSub. I think this person is based in London. But they said the victory for Iran, you can argue, yeah, they're basically taking the dub right now, is twofold, despite the severity of strikes and loss of life. 1, a victory in its resilience. 2, a victory in adding a new powerful weapon not previously considered, one that surpasses all others, its geography, the Persian Gulf, open seas, and strait between them. One of the major consequences of the global energy crisis is that it is too significant to allow Israel alone to decide whether to continue the war. America will be the one to decide. A hidden outcome is that the Israeli entity becomes a secondary rather than a decisive player, even turning into a burden, not only on the Western capitalist project that created it, but on the entire world. I think that's important to kind of mention. I think at this point it's going to basically be like, do we want to continue to hang with Israel or not? Essentially, is what this person is saying. So something has to give here at some point. So we'll see what will happen with that. But again, it seems like Israel is still basically running the show, at least for America. I'm not sure now. Europe, I think, might be kind of like slowly but surely on the outs with Israel at the kind of at least rhetorically and maybe like actionably, maybe kind of stepping away from Israel right now.
Among the public, sure.
Sure. I think
among the elected and business things, like they're all like, this is all serves capital. Whatever serves capital is what they're gonna do.
Right.
So yep.
But anyway, let's continue. The Strait of Hormuz dislocation granted to Iran through its full eastern coastline on the Gulf has become a weapon in its hands greater in impact than any other. Previously, Iran lacked the capacity to fully use it due to incomplete preparedness and means to secure it. Now it has been proven to the world that it has prepared and possessed the means and weapons to protect this option, making it the most significant one, while its enemies themselves have given it the opportunity to implement it on a silver platter. This shifts both Iran and the world to another level in managing, organizing, and structuring international and economic relations towards a system closer to a more just global order. So basically, all of this to say is that, again, Iran's running the show. They call the shots. They are able to make as much money as basically anyone is willing to give them, given their position. And now that essentially their sanctions have been lifted, like they can do basically whatever they want now. And they hadn't had to do much other than, thanks to Trump, basically shooting himself in the foot to allow Iran to have this much control, which I think it's funny because everyone is kind of screaming about Trump, whereas I don't hear a peep in what Democrats have said regarding Iran. If anything, I would argue like the Democratic leadership has egged Trump into starting war with Iran as early as last year, trying to egg him on with that. Not to mention like Kamala in that famous tweet, famous clip that she did on 60 Minutes, basically being like, oh, Iran is my highest priority. Like, why are they your highest priority? Like, and I forgot who was that interviewed her, didn't push her back on that. Like, why is that your highest priority? Nothing, like, not healthcare, not economics for, the American, not jobs, not like Iran, your highest priority. Hillary Clinton, too, back in 2008, mentioned Iran. Like, I hope they don't accelerate their nuclear program, which is a bull-faced lie, because you can argue that Obama kind of created a system where they weren't going to have them, but now they don't have nuclear weapons. But guess who do? Illegally, which you reported on so accurately a few weeks ago. You can check out our playlist for that. Nothing about Israel and their illegal nukes.
No.
But you want to talk about Iran and the nukes they don't have. Okay. But to kind of end this, we'll end on this tweet. This is from Dr. CBS. Now, not a fan that she is posting another rally. This was Food Anti-Coalition. Don't care. You know, but I do like the tweet where she says, it is imperative that we do something because this is not Trump's war on Iran. As so many principled people, especially in the global south, have stated, this is the U.S. war on Iran. So this is not limited to just Republicans here. This is us collectively as a country, us collectively as sycophants for imperialism, colonialism, and all the things. We own this shit. So, well, she kind of made that point. Bipartisan, abetted by an inert, alienated, and largely illiterate population, a feckless, impervious, intelligent, academic, and media class, and a disunited study group left, cannibalizing itself over who is the least irrelevant. I am so deeply ashamed. Walter Rodney was right when he said we were enemies of the people until proven otherwise. Now is the time to prove otherwise, which we can't.
Yeah.
Because we're obviously we can see this even among ourselves, you know, and our lack of focus in terms of, oh, like we are going to cancel certain podcasters over calling out a little bit of truth and not the whole system as a whole in terms of how, you know, in every single way we had this coming.
When they should have been canceled for being fucking ops all along. You know?
Right.
But anyway, like, I feel you. You know, people have goldfish brains is our problem. Everyone's, you know, look, a new car crash. You know?
Right. But I feel it's like, well, I think it's that, I don't think it's necessarily goldfish brain. I think that might be part of it, but I think it's more devious than that in terms of squirrel. Like, bring your attention over here to the reality of, like, this is a shit that has gone into this that's not limited to Trump. Because, like I said, like, you know, Democrats right now, you know, they're only mad, and we said this last week, they're only mad at Trump for starting this war illegally. That's really it.
Yeah.
Like, if he went through them for the proper channels, like, that's not to say they would have gone for it, but like
they would have gone. They would have gone for it. There would have been enough.
But definitely for certain, like if it were Kamala or Hillary or any other one of these like goons, you know, they at least the Democrats have the media apparatus and the PR to justify it, so that to make it and gaslight you into saying, "Oh, we have to go to war with Iran." Like, it's very obvious under Trump and the way he kind of is such an idiot that it makes it very obvious. But when you kind of call it out on the other side, it's kind of like either you get silence or people just kind of dismiss you for your fact, or it kind of like, well, they didn't do it. You have no proof that they're going to do it. And they're not in power now, so we'll never know.
They were in power like a year and a half ago when they were doing it. What do you mean? Like,
forgetting, right, what they've said, you know, what they've done, that, again, we turn a blind eye to, or can live in the illusion that they didn't do anything. You know, so much easier when it's on your side to kind of dismiss it or excuse it. But then when it's against your team that you're against, then you can easily call it out. So, you know, and again, I think the thing is on the left, the people who are truly on the left, we're just more principled in like, we hate all of it, regardless of who it is. Like, but that, again, is not necessarily popular. which is surprising.
We've also realized like that none of those people are really in power. They're stenographers for power. It really doesn't matter who you have in there. Like, they're still going to be fucking controlled by the Rothschilds and fucking AIPAC and fucking, you know, they're not writing these laws. They get the laws brought to them and then they fucking, you know, go through the motions. Like, that's pretty much it. And they vote on exactly what they're told to vote on and they move on. Same thing with anyone in actual elected office too. Like, I don't know, it's frustrating because we're like, you know, I want to be able to show people that's what it is, but then I'm distracting myself from the actual fucking things that are happening. You know, like, it's frustrating to be in the middle of that.
Right.
You know?
Right.
So, but anyway, anything else you got to add?
I mean, I think it's pretty obvious. No, but I think, again, with our audience, they kind of,
Yeah. You all know.
We know you guys got it. So I mean, you guys stay tuned and kind of see what antics Trump will get into next over the next few weeks. Pretty sure it's not going to be good. We'll see if we become like second impact, like in the Evangelion, as I said earlier. But stories like these are why we are heavily suppressed on YouTube. So if you want to support us financially and make sure that all of your money goes to us instead of giving like a 30% tax to YouTube, you can scan the QR code you see on your screen, or you can type in the Ko-fi link you see at the bottom of your screen. If you're in the YouTube chat and we're live, you can type in !donate, all one word, and the Ko-fi link will pop up in the chat where you can click and donate. You can also give to us on PayPal, Substack, Patreon, and Substack. Links are in the description below. And if you can't give any money, we appreciate it. That's fine. The free way and the best way for us is to like and subscribe to our channel. And please share our clips to help us fight the suppression that we do see on YouTube. And make sure you leave a comment so the algorithm allegedly recognizes as somewhat credible that they're able to push our content more. Help us get to 3K. I think we're very close. I think
120 away, something like that.
Ish away.
Yeah.
So maybe by the end of the month we can hit that for my birthday. Maybe. My birthday's in early May, by the way, so that'll be a nice birthday present for me.
It's gonna be May.
Sure.
What?
And thanks for watching.
All right. Let me check in on Substack. The Talking Wombat on Substack. The U.S. real cannot abide by a ceasefire. Funny how that works. Funny how we could have called that the second anytime ceasefire the word is mentioned. But let me scroll back up.
I do want to read Indy said regarding Ali.
Yep.
They wanted to send him to the front lines because he declared he was Muslim. They had protected his status before that.
Yeah, they were going to have him as like a, what do they call that fucking group? The NWO or the, you know, the like entertainment wing of the military. Someone will remember that acronym.
Right.
You know, it's like what Captain America was supposed to be part of in that fictional universe.
The auspicious disregards to Traore, which we'll get into later, but I'll read it now. It's an African country standing up to the West. How many times they've tried to assassinate him now? Well, again,
couple of times.
We'll get into this later, but yeah, like, again, yes, going against the empire is going to get you killed. Yes.
Yeah.
But we don't fully know his full intentions, and we'll get to that later, so we'll save it for that.
They also say, no, nukes are just empty threats. I wish people would stop contemplating nukes. Me too. Wish people would stop contemplating them, especially the ones in power that have decided they think tactical nukes are possible. We've read those works ad nauseum. Like, they think they can survive it. That's part of the problem. The rich think they can survive Armageddon, and they're okay with pulling the plug. You know? Yeah, it's fucking... You'd think there'd be a brain cell in the room, hopefully.
Right.
People debate if Israel runs USA or vice versa, but it's a marriage made in hell. Yep. Two parts to the same coin. It's kind of like a chicken or egg problem, you know? So, but anyway, well, should we get to our next one? I think I'm ready.
Yes.
Cool. So, Collin, you said you heard a bit about Kharg Island.
Yeah.
Like
some of our independent
have
colleagues
mentioned it.
That have again mentioned it, but like no
specifics.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, we'll get into that because I find it like, especially with this whole ceasefire that isn't a ceasefire, all that shit that we've talked about ad nauseum tonight, and that we will do again. But this is from Truth Out, who write, thousands of Iranians who live on Kharg Island face possibility of U.S. invasion. Invasion, you say, Collin? Have you heard anyone talk about that? That we might actually invade this country with boots on the ground? Like, anyway, U.S. media talk about the island's civilians as if they are a military problem if they talk about them at all. This is by Seamus Malekfasol. I hope I pronounced that right. But they write, over the past month of the U.S.-Israel war against Iran, Donald Trump's mission has creeped from vowing that he's not putting troops anywhere to backing himself into an escalation that makes the chance of ground invasion far more likely. As many as 17,000 American troops could be gathering in preparation for an operation to land on and potentially even seize any number of Iranian islands in the embattled Persian Gulf and the Strait of Hormuz. Kharg Island, deep in the Gulf and near the coasts of Kuwait and Iraq, is the isle the Trump administration has been clearly placed in its crosshairs. Media reports have suggested the administration is also considering other special operations, such as a complex raid to seize enriched uranium from Isfahan. But taking Kharg is now being touted by some of the same hawks who pushed for the initial U.S. military action on Iran as a new central goal of the war. We're going to move the goalpost, Collin. An opportunity to acquire significant leverage that the United States can and must take. We did Iwo Jima, Senator Lindsey Graham said to Fox News on March 22nd. We can do this. I think there was other reasons about the Iwo Jima shit, dog. You know, it's a world war happening. Anyway, other islands closer to the strait, like Larak, an island off Iran's southern coast, has been more critical to Iran's ongoing blockade of oil tankers. But 80 to 90% of Iran's own crude oil exports, which have increased since the war began, run through Kharg. Do you get it yet? Do you get why we're going after this island and not the strategic tactical island that's blocking off oil tankers?
Yep.
Okay, just making sure. Making the island's oil terminally deeply important to the functioning of Iran's economy in wartime or otherwise. So this is war of attrition, back and forth nonsense. Over the past few weeks, the American government, ever obsessed with seizing the oil of other nations as recompense, has attempted to make Kharg into its plaything. On March 13th, the U.S. conducted airstrikes on the island and sent a volley of rockets allegedly fired from Emirati territory, with CENTCOM claiming to have hit 90-plus military sites that destroyed naval mine storage facilities and missile storage bunkers, among other purported targets. After the strikes, Trump immediately bragged Iran now had no ability to defend anything we want to attack, and later said that we may hit it a few more times just for the fun, while he made a point of claiming to spare the oil infrastructure on the island, wary of price shocks caused by Israeli attacks on oil refineries near Tehran days earlier. Trump otherwise spoke of the island as if it had been totally demolished. The White House social media accounts posted as a message announcing the attacks with the headline, "Kharg Island obliterated." The obliteration would have come as news to the more than 8,000 permanent residents of the island, to say nothing of the thousands more who have come to Kharg to work in the oil industry, residents and workers who have been removed from the American government's discussion of a potential invasion, as well as American media reporting about the impacts of such an invasion. Which, have you heard any of them talk about the people there? No. So, locals on the island told BBC Persian that the targets the U.S. bombed hit deep inside the city of Kharg, where most of the population resides, that the island doesn't really have a military base, and that following the bombing of Kharg Airport, which runs domestic flights to cities on the Iranian mainland, there was now no way to evacuate. Sound familiar? The White House's cavalier attitude towards invasion of Iranian territory has been notable, with Trump mentioning on March 29th that maybe we can take Kharg Island, maybe we don't, because his favorite thing is to take the oil in Iran. But Western media coverage has arguably done just as much to create the impression that Kharg is solely a strategic asset to be conquered, with the welfare of its native inhabitants a footnote if mentioned at all. Mainstream outlets like Reuters and the WAPO have backgrounded the civilian population in favor of dry, military-focused analysis, with the Post blithely printing the words of an analysis from the pro-Israel Washington Institute that would be safer for U.S. forces to simply surround the island with mines and hold it hostage. Coverage on CBS and Fox News has perpetuated outright falsehoods about the island's population. CBS brought an analyst from the conservative Hudson Institute to say that Kharg could easily be isolated because it has no civilian population center and really is just oil infrastructure. Yes?
Oh, by the way, those of you who don't know, Hudson Institute is where Saga and Jetty comes from.
Sure. And his boy toy that he carries around occasionally, right? I forget his name. The other dude.
Marshall.
Yeah, that's it.
I'm not sure if they actually do that podcast anymore. I'm not sure if they're even friends anymore right now. But yeah.
Yep.
Like,
agreed.
Yeah. So the reason why you probably know of Saga having some of his shit takes, like,
oh, you mean when they actively like fucking astroturfed support for Israel and admitted that on camera?
Yeah, well, right. But I mean, just some of his takes have just been hot garbage. But
yeah, he's a fucking op, as we know.
Yeah.
Right. As are all of them. Kharg could easily be isolated because it has no civilian population center. So while Fox's Jesse Waters featured Medal of Honor recipient David Bellavia, he told viewers that civilians are not allowed to even go to Kharg Island. You lying motherfucker. Outlets that have mentioned Kharg's civilian population have often done so in passing, sometimes referring to the island's inhabitants as a mere additional risk that U.S. paratroopers and Marines will have to account for. In a Bloomberg editorial, James Staffordis, former NATO Supreme Allied Commander, writes about the thousands on the island as problems to be solved. People who need to be contained in their homes or evacuated that Iranians may have planted sophisticated booby traps. Not the boobies, not the booby traps. No, we had those in Vietnam. Those are bad. We didn't like those. You know? So, Jesus Christ. The narrative from Warhawks pushing for an invasion has suggested such an operation could be of a limited nature, more along the lines of a raid, and less like the long-term occupation of Iraq, a quagmire that the Trump administration has insisted the war with Iran is nothing like. But while Fox Business may bring on a former Navy SEAL to talk about how oil seized from Kharg Island could be passed back to the Iranian people once they take over this regime, there is little indication that Trump would want to quickly exit Kharg. The president said outright on Sunday that invading it would mean we had to be there for a while. There's even less indication that the Trump administration cares about giving power to the Iranian people or preserving their livelihoods or national economy. An invasion of Kharg would place thousands of Iranians, perhaps hundreds of thousands, and the U.S. military also chose to invade other islands like Larak, Kish, Abu Musa, Hormuz, or Qasim under direct military occupation in a form for an indefinite period with no immediate plans for exit or planned transition, a military operation with a few parallels in the War on Terror era. But it's nothing like Iraq, Collin. It's nothing like Iraq and Afghanistan. Nothing like that. It's not at all like that. The U.S. threats continue to build. Iran has reportedly brought further military reinforcements to Kharg over the past several days. Life on the island continues. Iran's Speaker of Parliament, Mohammad Baghir Ghalibaf, has warned of continuous and relentless attacks on vital infrastructure in the region should a U.S. ground invasion commence. Esmail Hosseini, spokesman for the Parliament's Energy Commission, was more blunt on a parliamentary visit to the island, saying that Kharg will become the graveyard of the aggressors. One resident of the island told a report from Mnar News the enemy thinks it can break the resistance on Kharg Island with a few attacks, but they are blind, and we will not leave the field for them. The White House, at least for now, does not appear to be heeding these warnings. The American narrative of having supposedly learned lessons after endless wars in Iraq and Afghanistan is finally being challenged by brutal reality. A desire to wage war without endangering American lives while exacting unlimited damage and chaos against any state that has the means to fight back means the question of what to do with civilians has become virtually unmentionable. A war can ostensibly be waged for the freedom of the Iranian people in the abstract, this narrative goes, but even their mere existence is not allowed to be a factor in the actual operations of the military, one that now openly prides itself on ignoring stupid rules of engagement and maximizing lethality. The people of Kharg and of Iran more broadly are de-emphasized, ignored, erased from discussion until they suddenly become an immediate and shocking problem, a problem the U.S. simply didn't anticipate, a problem to now be dealt with by a government that bragged about obliterating the land upon which they exist. So, I mean, here we go, bombing Kharg Island again. Like, you know. So, radar stations, ammunition storage, same shit they always fucking claim. We only hit military targets. We don't hit ambulances and hotels and fucking hospitals. That's not us. We don't do that. Oh, wait. Oh, wait, we do. Like,
We do.
but any thoughts so far? You know, and we've talked about this supposed 2-week ceasefire that lasted what? Fucking
2 seconds.
Like, right. So, yeah, not great. We're not making good decisions. So,
But it just gives. You're probably on story. I forgot where in East Asia, similar shit. I forgot the island that you mentioned, but
yes,
that's kind of what this is giving.
Mm.
Like,
Yeah, Paradise Bomb, do you mean? Papua New Guinea and New Guinea?
Yeah. Like, small island or strait or whatever, insignificant, so people are not going to necessarily like care about as much, if at all, and we just try to take over for our own. Israel's as a proxy for our own purposes. I'll say it that way. So, but yeah, of course, people are not going to talk about this because it's not significant enough.
Yep.
Like in terms of carnage, which again, that kind of relates to Gaza because people, I've said this before, people determine genocide in terms of like, I feel like a number, like it has to be like, well, again, the idea like Trump, like willing to annihilate almost 100 million people, like people can make sense of that. But like, they're saying, I would argue there's probably like 100,000, if not more. Well, the idea that in Gaza there's what 2 million people living there.
Yeah,
like,
or I don't know what the number is now.
About that, and like slowly, is not considered a genocide, or at least there's a debate whether it is or isn't. just as another aside, they're having the remembrance of the genocide in Rwanda. That started this week. And we've reported that on the show. We had done a few segments, and I've done an interview like at the beginning when we started this channel based on that genocide. And that, I believe, if I remember correctly, God, I forgot the numbers, but it would be kind of equivalent to close to 1 million
Right.
in Rwanda. Now, granted, I did hear this like in the news as a kid, but like not, but it took the US years to acknowledge that that was a genocide. So, so it's like, it's kind of like, it kind of sucks that, that we think it's so low of humanity, just generally in the West, that we don't consider one death atrocious versus like
Right.
93 million. Like one death is one death in this way is one death too many, in my opinion. And it's like, and so for me, it's just like, how easy is that for people? And I think it's easier for people because it's far away from us. We're never going to meet these people. So it's easier to kind of toss aside. But I'm sure if this were here, even if it was just 2, especially if they're of less melanin, then it will be a big deal. But yeah, I think it's just kind of awful how we kind of determine like human life, especially in a heinous way, in terms of it has to be a huge colossal number when it doesn't have to be, and it shouldn't be. Like any loss of life, especially for war, and we'll get into that like in my last extra segment tonight, like it's enough and heinous. It should be called out as such.
Yep. Well, just to close this out, friend of the show, Fee, Washington and Israel already chose clearly. Meanwhile, they're massacring Lebanon, whose protection was included in the 10-point plan, violating it and ending it before it started. In Fee's opinion, the ball is in Iran's court. Either it acts fast and finishes the job, or it succumbs entirely. And, here they are. They've stopped all negotiation efforts with the U.S. They told Pakistan that it will no longer engage in ceasefire talks. So, is that for the duration of this? I don't know. I don't know what their end goal is necessarily. Clearly, they want the U.S. to capitulate. I don't know. We'll see. So, but that's what I've heard so far. I've not heard anything else about it yet. So, we'll see. Meanwhile, people are bombing everywhere. So, yeah. I mean, can we all just get along? That's so hard. But talking about this kind of stuff is why YouTube demonetized us and then decided to give it back so that they could take 30% of it. So if you don't want them to have that kind of money, go to ko-fi.com/Indie News Network and scan that QR code on your screen and give us that way instead. But if you can't give monetarily, just like and subscribe, share this video, probably the best way you can help, and leave a comment. Let us know what you think. Otherwise, thanks for watching. Ooh. All right. Well, Chad, how you holding up? You doing okay out there? Israel is a Western colony for bankers, spy technology. Max Blumenthal laid down how Trump, his family, and Democrats all have investments in Israel's business. And, Whitney Webb also pretty good with covering those connections. They had to continue with their agenda and make sure the U.S. and Israel are never in a position where they can harm Iran. Like, I'm with you. That would be nice if that's possible from them. So, yep. What do I got on the Substack? People feeding in and out. People probably, they come in late usually. Well, what's your next story? This one.
We're going to talk about MAGA.
Okay.
More specifically, the Christian nationalists in our government that are pushing for this war in Iran, which, again, the idea that Christians are pushing for, well, I mean, you're an atheist, so like.
Yeah, I'll hold my tongue on it. I think it's all a fucking sham.
Me, I guess I can consider myself somewhat agnostic at this point.
I'll bring you to the dark side eventually. You know?
Sure.
One of these days.
Yeah, I mean, again, for me, like, there are aspects of the faith in its organic state I think are good if you do them correctly, but the way we kind of do it is shit. And just kind of hypocrisy that we use in terms of, you know, what the Bible says versus how we practice it. And then, especially when we get into it tonight, how we can easily spin it to fit our nefarious ends. And to see that in our government right now, where we allegedly have a separation of church and state, and now like those lines are purposely becoming more blurred, I think in my mind is very concerning, especially as someone who was somewhat embedded in the Christian faith for a good chunk of my life. But this is an article from Truthout, who's written by Sarah Gabler, hopefully I pronounced your last name correctly, who reports Christian nationalists in U.S. government push attacks on Iran as holy war with I keep saying pig, but again, same difference. With Pete Hegseth leading the Department of Defense, otherwise known as the Department of War. I think actually that's more appropriate. People are like, I hate it. I'm probably like, that's probably more spot on than defense.
Accurate.
The line separating church and state is increasingly blurred. So before we do that, want to show this picture here.
Yes, sir.
You know, this is kind of the basis of why, well, this was in the article, but this was kind of the basis of why I wanted you to use to create the thumbnail. So we see RFK, and Marco Rubio and Trump and Hegseth, and I don't care about those other two clowns, but you see them praying, which I think is rich considering how you're praying, but then you're killing kids in the Middle East in the name of Jesus, allegedly. So, and especially given that all these guys are protecting Trump, who is not a Christian. So, but anyway, I digress. So anyway, Sarah continues how Christian clergy talk about Jesus this Easter, which at the time of this recording was this past Sunday, will tell you a lot about their politics. While parishioners in the U.S. are likely to be greeted by the traditional refrain, "He is risen," at their April 5th Easter service, they are just as likely to be met with the phrase, "Christ is King." This rhetoric replaces their traditional understanding of Easter as a celebration of Jesus' sacrifice and resurrection with a more aggressive vision of a warrior Jesus that resonates strongly with Trump-aligned white Christian nationalists. The phrase, "Christ is King," isn't new. It's sometimes used by Christians to refer to the belief that Jesus' divine rule goes beyond that of earthly leaders. But the phrase has recently become a kind of rallying cry for Christian supremacy. Historian Christian Cobes Dumez, author of Jesus and John Wayne, How White Evangelicals Corrupted a Faith and Fractured a Nation, told Truthout. Over the past few years, the slogan has spread to far-right profiteers like Nick Fuentes to Trump's cabinet and the military. In February, Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth used the phrase at a convention of the National Religious Broadcasters, galvanizing Christian nationalists first for authoritarian rulers whose Jesus is defined by militant masculinity, more like a crusader or cowboy than peace-loving sacrificial lamb celebrated on Easter, who is executed for challenging the hierarchies of empire.
Man, I like my Jesus to party. I think of him in like a tuxedo t-shirt. That way he's still like formal, but says he likes to party. Anyway, that's all this fucking sounds like. Yeah, it's from Talladega Nights. You know, a 9-pound, 10-ounce baby Jesus. Oh my God, what a good movie. So good. Anyway.
Along the way, the phrase has become a dog whistle for anti-Semitism and is often combined with other Christian nationalist holy war rhetoric that has been spiking since the U.S. and Israel attacked Iran on February 28th. Popular Christian Zionist preachers like John Hagee came out of the gate praising Operation Epic Fury in a sermon from March 10th. On March 23rd, Representative Angie Ogles posted an AI-generated video of himself, Pete Hegseth, and Marco Rubio dressed as crusaders with the caption, "This is a battle of good versus evil. We must affirm that our nation was built on Christian principles." Their language and iconography distract from the fact that the U.S. and Israel's attacks on Iran were launched without congressional approval, are unpopular, and have killed more than 1,500 people.
Yep.
Christian nationalists like Hegseth, Hagee, and Ogles have fashioned a messiah to look like the kind of earthly leader they desire, one who will uphold what Dumas calls their ideology of militant masculinity. It's a paradigm that enshrines patriarchal authority and condones the callous display of power at home and abroad, she writes in Jesus and John Wayne. Dumas says, Christian nationalists tend not to talk about Jesus very much. They'll talk about biblical law, righteousness, or social issues. But if you really start talking about Jesus in the Bible, then you get into things that arguably undercut many of their core values. Christian nationalists conveniently ignore the passages where Jesus commands his followers to serve the poor and love thy neighbor. Instead, figures like the disgraced evangelical pastor Mark Driscoll promote militant masculinity through podcast streams like Built for War and an Instagram account filled of bull wrestling cowboys.
Yep.
The frontiersman protector of faith and family values, quote unquote, held by Driscoll's podcast saturates white evangelical culture. Even in the 90s, this was the primary message about masculinity I heard on Christian radio from chart-topping Christian music artists like Michael W. Smith and Stephen Curtis Chapman. Both had cowboy-themed albums in the early 90s. Smith's Go West, Young Man, and Chapman's The Great Adventure, with the chorus, "Saddle up your horses, we got a trail to blaze." Smith remains a popular entertainer within the MAGA circle and played at the National Prayer Breakfast on February 5th. It's tied to empire building, says Dumas. Whether these men fashion themselves as crusaders or cowboys, they imagine that they're protecting their families and country from threats, foreign and domestic. From Cold War imperialism to the rise of Islamophobia following 9/11, the language of perpetual threat against America and American Christians was used to justify preemptive violence. I think that's key to understanding a lot of evangelicals' preferences when it comes to foreign policy. In the Iraq War, we saw that evangelicals were far more likely than other Americans to support war and preventive war in general.
Yeah.
About 70% of active duty military personnel identify as Christian, slightly higher than the national average. Military service is an area where white Christian nationalists can increasingly find their beliefs reinforced. As Dumas writes, in the age of war on terror, pastors weren't necessarily the most effective purveyors of Christian manhood. The military was where boys became men, and where men matured in the Christian faith. Military men, then, could serve as guides for civilian men and for the church as a whole. With Hegseth leading the Department of Defense, the line separating church and state is increasingly blurred. In February, he invited Christian nationalist pastor Doug Wilson to a prayer service at the Pentagon and has been holding these monthly prayer services since last May. The group Americans United for Separation of Church and State, AU, filed a lawsuit over the meetings to determine whether the departments are upholding their obligation to remain neutral about religious matters and respect the religious freedom of federal workers. Alessandro Terenzoni is a vice president of public policy at AU. He told Truthout that the Trump administration is playing this long game to Christianize the federal workforce, including the military, through measures like the executive order on eradicating anti-Christian bias and the Religious Liberty Commission. The December meeting of the Religious Liberty Commission that focused on the military was led by Texas Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, with a roster of members and speakers that Terenzoni said looked like a commercial for the organizations who are pushing this sort of Christian nationalist agenda: the Heritage Foundation, First Liberty Institute, the Alliance Defending Freedom, who represent Christian and national plaintiffs in all these lawsuits. Terenzoni said the meeting contradicted the mandate that the government not single out one faith to privilege above others, or turn the military into a mission field. White Christian nationalist messaging isn't coming from Hegseth alone. In March, Trump appointed Turning Point USA's Erica Kirk to an advisory role for the Air Force Academy. She replaces her late husband, Charlie Kirk, who in one board meeting he attended in August 2025, insisted the Academy finish repairing an on-site chapel because its closure has had a depressing effect on the psyche of the cadets. Charlie Kirk also asked for confirmation that the Air Force Academy isn't teaching critical race theory, saying, "We need to educate the cadets towards being something, towards being a warrior, but for what? We want them after 4 years to be able to articulate and feel in their soul American exceptionalism." Huh.
Yep.
And this is the guy that people are like salivating for. Okay. I asked Mikey Weinstein, a Jewish graduate of the Air Force Academy and founder of the Military Religious Freedom Foundation, what he thought about the appointment of Erica Kirk. He said, again, Jew, it's abominable. Tommy Tupperville is on the board along with Mark Wayne Mullen, who Mark Wayne Mullen is now the what is he now? He's a he's the DSS. I think he's now the new DHS director. I think that someone in the chat will know who he is, but I know that name.
Yeah.
Two major Christian nationalists right there. What background does Erica Kirk have in regard to the Academy? But my school has been ground zero for Christian nationalists for a very, very, very long time. Terenzoni warns that the leaders of the Religious Liberty Commission are promoting a persecution narrative in order to legitimize their work. At the December meeting, the owner of a store in Texas that makes jewelry embossed with Bible verses and military insignia spoke about his successful lawsuit against the Department of Defense for revoking the company's license to use official military logos. Hear this man literally crying about how the government victimized him, and he's being given this platform upon which to weep about this anti-Christian bias that he experienced at the hands of the federal government, explains Terenzoni. Meanwhile, a Hindu soldier who talked about the horrible discrimination that he experienced at the hand of his leadership was dismissed by the committee.
Of course it was.
Dumas also warns that Christians' sense of embattlement is what's behind their support of preemptive war. With someone like Hegseth, who in his own books talks about setting aside the rules of warfare because that's only for weak men. This kind of preemptive attack aggression is always justified because they're going to come for you, so you need to get out in front of that, says Dumas. In their worldview, they're the victims, not the civilians in Iran who the U.S. and Israel are bombing, or the Palestinians whose genocide is funded by the U.S. government. Generations of Christian nationalist men were raised on the militant masculinity and its fall nostalgia, glorification of rugged individualism, and delusions of persecution. That's part of what made Trump's Make America Great Again vision so appealing to them. Black and brown men are conspicuously left out. Masculine power is dangerous if it isn't in the hands of white Christian men, says Dumez. In the run-up to the 2024 election, Trump campaigned on the threat of immigrants. That was really their bread and butter. The MAGA movement has also been swift at marshaling militant masculinity to pass anti-LGBTQ policies. This administration is really fixated on gender. We knew during the campaign that the vilification of transgendered Americans was a big piece of what they were doing, says Tetrazzoni. One of the things that's different now is that there seems to be very few guardrails anymore, said Dumez. In many ways, the rhetoric doesn't actually feel all that different, but their access to power is. The fact that now our Secretary of Defense has been steeped in this military evangelicalism and has wholly embraced these ideas of militant Christian manhood and has absolutely thumbed his nose at the rules of warfare and, one might argue, human decency. Hegseth's prayer services at the Pentagon are a sign of guardrails are shrinking. On March 25th, he prayed for overwhelming violence, using carefully selected passages from the Bible to justify an unjust war. Head bowed, Hegseth intoned, "Pour out your wrath upon those who plot vain things and blow them away like chaff before the wind. Let every round find its mark against the enemies of righteousness in our great nation. Let justice be executed swiftly and without remorse, so that evil may be driven back." This prayer prompted a rebuttal from Pope Leo XIV, who wrote on social media that Jesus does not listen to the prayers of those who wage war. But such a rebuke is not likely to satisfy the warmongers in the US government, making AU's lawsuit over these Christian nationalist services even more urgent.
Ask any Southern Baptist, they'll tell you Catholics aren't Christian, so, like, they don't count,
I would also argue, now, I feel in a lot of ways I was very lucky because I grew up in churches where my pastors were from the South, Texas and Florida, respectively. And they didn't act like this. They didn't preach this like rugged masculinity of Christianity, fortunately. So I was one of the lucky ones, I would argue. But I would argue even in that, I think they would be kind of considered weak according to men like that, like Hegseth. I would argue, because I think now, go ahead.
Well, I mean, not to get on a completely different tangent, but like, put yourself in like my brain space for a bit of like, I don't believe any of this shit, right? Like if you go, okay, none of this is real, right? There's no God, there's no whatever. Here's all these people, and they've created all these different books and whatever, and it's dictating policy on a national fucking level, international level, based off this fucking fairy tale that they've invented. Like, it frustrates me to no end that we have to placate these people who believe this kind of stuff. To me, it's like, if we could all just move on and like actually worry about they have this thing where it's like morality can only be talked about in this like religious mindset. Like, no, you can easily talk about it outside of that, and like this article said, it's like, look at the guy who's Hindi. Like, all this is usually chosen because your parents follow this religion, usually, right? That's why you believe it. It's not necessarily that you actually believe it. It's just been part of your culture this whole time, which is partially what they're saying about this, like, evangelical white, they all think they're fucking Patrick Swayze in Roadhouse, like, it's partially like media manipulation and, the romanticizing of war and war heroes and, good little American Christian boys and girls, like.
Right. I think I think my issue, especially as I evolved in the faith and evolved out of it,
Yeah.
has been that. It's the idea of mostly this American exceptionalism and this, not to say the rugged masculinism, because as I said, I didn't see that, I didn't experience that. I
Yeah.
just think in general, it kind of goes against who Jesus, that whether you believe in him or not, but the Jesus that I studied did not prescribe to any of this bullshit. Like, if you can argue that Jesus was somewhat of, not so, I would argue was a socialist. He talked about caring for the poor. He talked about the least of these. And
Yep.
in a lot of ways, that kind of, because I studied theology, well, went to a Catholic school, so in high school, so I studied theology there, but then I went to a Jesuit university, so I studied theology there as well. That was actually one of
Right.
my majors in undergrad. So having that background in terms of who Jesus was, you know, and to be, and like Jesus, I would argue, had the masculinity of, in my mind, what a normal man should have. Like, gentle when he needed to be, but then like crack the whip literally when needed to be. Especially for against the people who were oppressing, as I said, the least of these. And then for me, I think for me, this is kind of personal because in a lot of ways, that's what led me into me becoming a teacher in a lot of ways. Because understanding, well, I'll say this, it was actually for me to be either a pastor or a teacher. Being a
Right.
teacher, one. Probably for the better, I would argue. But I see, so for me, a lot of my teaching kind of stems in terms of my studying, in terms of caring for the least of these, but I think also politically for me too, in terms of what policies need to be implemented to ensure that there's universality among everybody, where everyone is able to live the way that they want to in a way that's comfortable for them. That's kind of what my faith has brought me to. Not this bullshit in terms of we gotta fight the infidels in these countries that are that and they're coming over and like they're taking our and like kind of like that whole MAGA bullshit that's kind of been incepted into this Christianity.
Well, it's
that I
not just
don't
been
describe.
except historically, it's kind of part of it. Like,
Right.
you know, and always has been. Like, go ask the
Right.
Catholics what they've been doing for the last fucking 2 centuries. Like, you know, there's been what? How many crusades? The kids' crusades, the fucking, let alone all their shit in South America and Africa. Like, you know, I don't know. It's just preposterous to me that we even like entertain it. You know, like, it's just, you know, and I grew up in one of these like you know, very progressive areas of, you know, Christianity, at least, where they all, you know, it's all love thy neighbor and all that stuff, and it's very important. And you know, I get that there's some Barnum statements that we can take as like good, inevitably, you know, but
I think
like, who's to say that like you could get the same thing from Hindu teachings, you could get the same thing from Buddhist teachings, you can get the same thing from like to tack on all this superstition on top of it, as opposed to just ideas that people have put out into the world, you know, and especially to make it like rules you live by, to me are like ridiculous. Like I you know, so the conviction necessary to just shut off parts of your brain so that you can do that is wild to me. You know?
I think for me, funny enough, I kind of realized there was something wrong with Christianity was when I went to Africa.
Yeah.
And I've said this on the show many times, in a lot of ways, that was kind of the beginning of my political growth when I lived there and visited the country several times. And just seeing like the dichotomy of how the white missionaries that for all intents and purposes, mentored me and like, and like kind of like saw the program that I was doing. But then going back and actually talking to like the local Ugandan community there, and especially like the teenagers, young adults who I was working with, and thank God, given the melanin, like they saw me as somewhat of a safe space to kind of talk through a lot of these things with them, especially me returning multiple times for them, that they realize, oh, he cares about us, that he's willing to come back here. So they were able to share more. And what they were saying to me was how they felt, they noticed, like I've said this on the show, like I think I told you that's like one of the last times I was at the the place that I was staying at where I did this program at. Like there was a family that lived in California that had, now granted, it was a house I stayed in during my visits, but like it was a modest house, like westernized, but it was an older woman had lived there for many years. It was fine. It was whatever. But she left, and then this California family, and I think they had maybe 3 kids. They moved in once she left and like converted, like they had like a fireplace, which in of itself, number one, was like, what the fuck do you need a fireplace for? Like, you're living in a fucking tropical climate, you don't need it. But they had like a flat, like a screen as a TV, and like, so it was souped up with as much bells and whistles like you could possibly think of, given it was Uganda. Meanwhile, like the Ugandan huts or homes that they were living in were more run down. Like, things needed fixing. Like the state, like depreciated each time that I went to visit, and it was very obvious. And by that time, there were people who were telling me, like, we're noticing this. Like, how is it that they're living in luxury and we're not? And these were Christian people that were supposed to work alongside the Ugandans in terms of sharing the ministry. So I had a huge problem with that. Like, especially given that this is what the Ugandans were telling me privately. So it's just, again, kind of more of the hypocrisy of it. But then, like, I almost argued the entitlement that, I see a lot of Christian, not all, but some have, in terms of their position, especially when they're in the global south, and kind of subtly thinking, oh, we're better than you, we're, have more intelligence, that we have more education, that know it all over you. And somewhat.
Right.
And again, it may not be obvious, but in my mind, from what I saw, it was very subtle. But you're right. It kind of plays into this exceptionalism and imperialism and this cowboy, like, do yourself, like, frontiersman, like, kind of thing.
Yeah.
That I don't describe to. And very much
manifest destiny, literally.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Which is, again, very much against, again, if you believe in the Bible, in the New Testament, very against what Jesus was teaching. And so, just personally, on a personal standpoint, as well as professionally, like, I cringe at this kind of talk, especially given war, especially given, like, in my last story tonight, where I'm going to be talking about children, it's like, again, GOP, and I can argue Democrats too, you talk about universal rights or party of family values, and yet you're purposely bombing brown children and destroying families overseas.
Yeah.
Like, that's not Christian. Like,
well, all that shit is so fucking performative from them, Like, they're not thinking about that shit literally back when they fucking go home. It's just like marketing for them, practically. It's just another like lane of marketing that they can tap into. So
Yeah. I will say, to kind of conclude, I am somewhat disappointed in the church, capital C. Like, besides, like, with a few exceptions, like the Pope, but Pope has
he's got his own fucking issues. So
right. Well, the institution of that has its own issues. I'm not sure about this.
Well,
Pope
him too. You know, he's had his own issues.
Just, I feel like just in a lot of these social justice stuff that the church in itself is very isolated. Like, they might do some nice stuff in terms of, oh, we'll give money or support like this charity or organization, nonprofit or whatever that's doing the work or whatever. But that may be more or less it. Not the idea of like, look, how can we use our faith to better society in terms of making it more like the kingdom that Jesus was preaching in the Bible. I don't see much of that at all within the institution of the church right now. It's just the idea of like, you go in, say your hallelujahs, say your Hail Marys, or sing or whatever and dance. You might meet up with a couple of people and kind of acknowledge like, oh, I did this, or like, and go to Bible study and then go home and kind of live your life, especially among like people who have more privilege. You know, meanwhile, there's people in the world who are dying and starving and all this stuff that we give a blind eye to. Like, that, in part, is why I left the church. Because it was like, I felt like I could do a lot more good being out of it than being complicit in it in terms of the shit that I was seeing, that I felt like the church in of itself can do a lot more to tackle against. But when you're describing to this American conceptualist and how that's kind of mixed in, it's going to warp the very thing that you claim that you study the Bible and study, I say loosely, for.
Yeah. Ugh. Anything else you got to add?
No, I mean, I feel like I talk about this a lot just given my own personal experience. But, you know, let us know in the chat, especially if you know any of these Christian nationalist types, what has your experience been? Or do you prescribe to what they kind of are promoting, especially in government right now? I'm sure, again, if you're a family, you don't, but let us know in the chat, or if you're watching this a clip in the comments, what you think. But talking about this stuff is why we're shadow banned on YouTube. And even though we're monetized, they will take a third of your giving. So in order to prevent that, you can scan the QR code you see on your screen, or you can go to the Ko-fi link you see at the bottom of your screen. If you're in the YouTube chat and live, you can type in ! donate, all one word, and the Ko-fi link will pop up. And any amount you're able to give to support us in the network will be much appreciated. That being said, you can also give via Paystack, Substack, PayPal, Cash App. Links are in the description below. And if you can't give it all, we more than understand. The free way is liking and subscribing, and make sure you're sharing our content. So hopefully YouTube will favor us a little bit more. And make sure you leave a comment in order to have, it allegedly helps with engagement on YouTube. And thanks for watching.
Nope. All right, 2 chats. People jumping in, finishing up their chores and whatnot. The auspicious, I'm an atheist too. I think of religious people, I think, shouldn't you be like a Quaker or something? Fear God, love thy neighbor, or are you just a cultist who dislikes other religions now? And also adds, they like to picture Jesus in a Leonard Skinner cover band, and I'm in the front row and I'm hammer drunk. Classic line.
Well, here's the thing that you have said to me before. Like, you growing up had legit questions about the faith that you didn't get an answer to, or it was just kind of like, just go with faith.
Right.
And it's like, if you're in a spot where you can't, and again, you weren't being a dick, you were just curious. Like, you wanted to understand more of how the world worked, I would assume, in terms of the faith that you were, I would argue, maybe forced or at least encouraged to subscribe to.
Which
And you
really wasn't, that was mainly societal. Like, you know, it's what your friends did. They all went to youth group and, you know, like my parents were never super religious that way, which is why when I went in to those as like social events, like I wasn't thinking of them as, you know, like I was already skeptical. So like you say I wasn't being a dick. I was definitely putting some hard questions on the table that they really didn't have answers for, you know.
Right, but I don't see it. But there's the thing, I don't see that as being dickish.
No.
That's the thing. Like,
no.
I see that as, you know, if anything, they should. Now, they could definitely bring in the Bible and try and make the case to you, but it didn't sound like they didn't do that. It was either like, shut up, don't ask these questions, or trust me, bro. That's
no, it was usually all boils down. It gets to the like, well, the new Christians and Jesus's church was much different, and I'm like, was it? Because it doesn't look that way historically to me, and that's if he fucking existed at all, which, you know, still in an argument about that, you know, like the Romans never wrote any fucking Jesus down. The king of the Jews, who they had lots of problems with, never got talked about in anything from them. They wrote down a lot of shit, Collin. The Romans wrote down like fucking everything, you know, like
well, the fact that they basically wrote down how to essentially kill people via crucifixion. Like,
yep,
they were very like,
oh, they knew it was a science to them, you know,
right?
Like they found it humane to do to some
when
degree.
To do it, what to expect when they did it, like
right?
They were thorough.
Yeah.
So the idea that, like, again, Jesus was crucified, you know, there's no record of that.
Yeah.
You know,
the only there's like 2 Jewish historians like fucking years after his death that even give any credence outside of the Bible to him. From when I've looked all this shit up way back in the day when I was having these arguments. But I just, you know, like you're literally told to just believe this practically. Like this happened, you know, everything in these books are true. You mean the thing where a human was capable of walking on water? Well, God is magic. Yeah, but it don't exist. So, you know,
how's that possible?
Right. Like, I don't know. You know, it's like I could get under the idea that he gave one guy some superpowers for a while, but you're telling me that's never happened since then? No one, you know. Anyway, all that shit's a little fucking. I'm massively skeptical of all that. You know, I'm skeptical of people who think the fucking, you know, can talk to ghosts and shit for the same reason. So, you know, and whenever you question it too hard, they just go, it's, don't take it literally, you know, like, it's like, yeah, but you guys take the shit literally all the time. And only when someone questions it do you go, oh, it's not literal.
Given my training, depending on the book you're reading, you're not supposed to. That's
right.
The of it. You're not supposed to take it literally.
Well, and then people pick and choose what they take literally and stuff, right? Like all of this, the whole book's fucking subjective Barnum statement. So, you know, you can take what you want from the stories you want to and ignore the others, you know? So.
Well, here's the thing with that. I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. It's just how you're applying it in terms of what you know. If you're able to look at the Bible from start to finish and kind of figure out like context and culture and all this kind of stuff, like the idea is for you to kind of engage in a world, in my mind, to be able to engage in it positively to, again, be a better person, be a better neighbor, be a better citizen, in my mind. Like, regardless of your faith, how you're able to treat people who might be different from you.
Yeah.
You know, to me. So the idea that there are Christians who don't necessarily subscribe to that, I think it's very concerning to me. But then also, more importantly, how effective is the faith in of itself if you're able to twist it so easily and people will believe you?
Yeah.
Especially if you can't criticize or kind of question
That's
their motives. And again, just given the last story, that's the point. We're not allowed to question. They're basically being like, shut the fuck up or you're going to get fired.
It's because the
or
minute you
whatever else
do,
if you question us.
you start to realize that it's all bullshit. Like,
Right. And I
you
feel
know,
like a lot of ways, this is kind of like what is happening in government in the hands of Hegseth is very parallel to what a lot of pastors do in their churches. Like, just trust me, bro. Trust me, bro, and follow my orders or else. That's what is giving to me.
yeah.
And that's very destructive, much like abusive. So, and we're seeing that right now. So, I don't know. It's just very counter to what, and again, I consider myself very lucky, but I also think I had, I would say, somewhat effective training in all this that I'm able to think in the way that I do. But
Well,
even
like,
with that, it was just kind of like,
imagine
I'm not so sure about this.
imagine it was just a different set of like acclaimed works. You know, if you suddenly had to like base your life around Shakespeare, you know, and we put up, you know, fucking every prom night there's quotes from The Tempest, you know, like you'd find it weird. Like if you didn't have any, like you'd find it completely ridiculous, any of it. And that people will mental gymnastics their way into trying to give it some purpose. You know, I find interesting. You know, as much as people try to give Shakespeare, we've talked about that before too, that these religious idiots want fucking Shakespeare as part of it too, and then didn't read any of that shit either. It's like, okay, you know, they just like the idea of the shit. That's it. You know, it's like it's all like TV Jesus. You know, they want the movie Jesus. So, but so to our last story, well, my last story, and I haven't seen really anyone else talk about this, which is ironic, seeing as how it should be covered by a lot of the people in independent media, especially to debunk whatever the Western shit is going to say about it. But Ibrahim Traore, president of Burkina Faso, recently declared, you know, he got rid of political parties, right? That's where this starts. So I found this. This is from Al Jazeera, right? Which we know how I feel about them. But one of the few people that wrote about it. So we'll take a look at what they had to say. But Burkina Faso military leader Traore says, forget democracy. Again, the headline already pushing towards a narrative, right? Traore reneged on promises to hold elections and has since scrapped political parties in the country. So, Ibrahim Traore says that people need to forget about democracy just 3 months after his government dissolved all political parties in the West African nation. Speaking to journalists in a lengthy interview on state television on Thursday, Traore referenced Libya as an example of a country where he said outsiders attempted to impose democracy but failed. People need to forget about the issue of democracy, he said. We have to tell the truth. Democracy isn't for us. Democracy kills, Traore said, according to a French broadcaster RFI. Look at Libya. It's a prime example right next to us. Everywhere they tried to establish democracy in the world, it's done with bloodshed. Democracy is slavery. In the latest sign of Traore's government's distancing itself from the initial promises it made to set the country back on a democratic path, Traore seized power in September 2022, 8 months after an early military coup he was involved in overthrew the democratically elected government of President Roch Marc Kabore. The military government's promise to battle al-Qaeda and ISIL-linked armed groups that have swarmed the country and now control large areas of territory. However, the country has continued to come under repeated attacks and hundreds of thousands of civilians are displaced. Traore, who has gained widespread admiration from the African diaspora for his anti-Western rhetoric, initially promised to organize elections in 2024. A year later, the leader resigned and said elections would not be held until all parts of Burkina Faso are safe for voting. In January, Traore's government scrapped more than 100 political parties in the country and seized their assets. Parliament and all political activity had previously been suspended after Traore took power. The Independent National Election Commission was dissolved in July 2025 after Traore's government claimed the agency was too expensive. Analysts have also raised concerns about the government's apparent targeting of other institutions, including the media and judiciary. Journalists, political opposition leaders, and prosecutors critical of the military government have been forcibly conscripted and sent to the front lines in recent months, with some later released. Similar moves against political parties have been taken by neighboring military governments in Niger and Mali, which are also battling armed group violence. All three countries signed the Regional Economic Community of West African States bloc to form their own alliance of the Sahel states last January after pressure to hold elections. They have also turned to Russian paramilitary fighters after evicting former colonial power France, which had deployed some 5,000 soldiers to help fight armed groups in the Sahel region. Again, talking about this, violence has continued to mar Burkina Faso. Fatalities tripled in 3 years since Traore took power, reaching 17,000 by last May. That's compared with the 3 years prior, which combined recorded deaths for 6,000, according to an analysis by U.S.-based Africa Center for Strategic Studies. So that's where that information is coming from. So take that with a giant grain of salt. But yeah, so thoughts so far, K-Bear?
I think we're going to get into this later.
Yeah.
We will. We both have discussed how mixed we are with Traore. And I want to make clear, because I think even in our space, people deem Traore a hero, which I understand given
I get it.
France out of the country. He's trying, good.
Yeah.
Good. The question is, what are you trying to replace it with? Now, and again, this is a bias against Al Jazeera, even in Al Jazeera. So, like, we can't say there's just a lot of unknowns here that I think we have to go into this with a lot of nuance that wasn't necessarily reported in the article.
No.
Or he wasn't asked specifically. Like one of the questions I would have asked, okay, I want to, and this is what the thing we have. I'm making an assumption, but I could very well be wrong, and I could admit to be wrong.
Yeah.
Like when you're eliminating political parties, why? Do you think that it's because of the corruption? Now, kind of seeing what we're seeing in the West, is it related to like the corruption that we're seeing with the political parties in the Western system, especially in America? Like, are you trying to get rid of that? If so, what are you trying to replace that with? Like, how can you ensure your constituents, your people, are being taken care of?
Right.
What system are you trying to implement?
And that their voices are heard.
Standard of who you're trying to implement.
Right.
Like, these are the questions that I wish were asked.
Sure.
If he ever was asked. If we were able, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to have him. So this is the interview they're talking about where he was asked about this, right? So we'll listen to what he had to say on that, and I think he does go into some of that. Like he got asked a bit of it, if that makes sense. So we'll get into it.
Excellence, les activités des partis politiques ont été suspendues et par la suite on a constaté leur dissolution. Alors quel message se cache derrière ces décisions?
Aucun message. La politique a pu faire quoi au Burkina? Pas grand-chose. Ça nous a divisés, ça c'est une réalité. même dans des familles,
even in families, two brothers in different parties.
Ils vont développer une haine sauvage, vous ne pouvez pas comprendre. Et ça, c'est dangereux. En termes de développement,
in terms of development, you know, politics is like a business in Africa, meaning I'm a party president. I recruit you, you're smooth talkers, skilled deceivers. We flatter our followers, economic operators on all sides help, finance us, and you go corrupt people. Once you've corrupted enough, if we win elections, what do? Steal for a return on investment. And these operators who finance you, you have no choice. You're forced to give them all the state contracts. You can't make them pay customs duties properly. You can't collect taxes properly because they need a return on investment. That's the reality. Even us, when we came to power, those were operatives who approached us to finance us. We are not politicians. If you want to give money, that's what led us to create a donation reception commission, if you remember. In the FSP now, because we would reject their money, and we said, well, since your money in a bad habit, go ahead and give. We took it and put the treasury in an account. Now, afterwards, you come back saying that, well, we support you, so I need my trucks cleared at customs. They said this and that. You have to help us get them out. Usually, that's what happens. And even explain the method, thinking you don't know. It doesn't work with me. You pay all customs, all your taxes properly. If you want to blackmail someone because you supported them, it's at the treasury. It helps the fighters. So that's this way of doing politics and all. And we put an end to it. We need a new political ideology. You need training before taking to me about politics in our own way, so that's why we suspended and then we dissolved. But even those who did politics agree, a revolution, it's not other people, it's the same individuals, but I think people now understand they were manipulated. They were on the wrong path. And now we're building something new. So somewhere it's not individuals who left, same individuals, but I think there was a trigger that lets us start fresh on a new basis. So imperialist parties dissolve, but the men are there being rebuilt, ready to launch the Burkina Faso machine. So any of that you caught?
Yes. To me, it was vague.
Yeah.
Like
a little bit for sure.
Kind of mentioned in terms, yeah. Like he mentioned corruption in the political parties, of course. Yeah. But where does that come? Where is that coming from? And I wish he mentioned imperialism toward the end. If your statement of the case is I'm dissolving political parties dates because they're based on Western influence, which is incompatible with our African values or whatever, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Then say that. And I would kind of buy into that. This kind of seems like, now again, he talked about corruption, which happens in Africa. I just felt like he could have made more of a case for it. It just kind of seemed like I don't like it because there was too much corruption, so I got rid of it and I'm replacing it. And even with that, it's like, okay, replacing it with what?
Right.
Like how now we don't know because that's all I think I would assume that's all he got from this interview. So we have no idea if he was even asked that.
Yeah.
But I just felt like even in that he could have explained a little bit more, like teach them a little something, like use examples as to, well, I even in how you want to move forward, like I want to use the example of such and such to able to build into such and such in terms of how this will be more compatible with my country, my constituents. I wish he could have said it.
Yeah, like here's some models I'm looking at or whatever.
Right.
And
instead, he was just very vague. And I'll argue this might be given his age.
Yeah.
But this is a guy that seemingly has read Thomas Sankara.
We'll get to him in a bit.
Read him and you're kind of influenced by that, say that.
Yeah.
Because I think especially if it's the older community, they would know who he is. So especially in Africa, if you mention Thomas Sankara, they'll be like, okay. Like, I totally get where you're coming from. The youth may not necessarily know. So this could be a teachable moment for the youth and being like, these are the teachings that I had, of Thomas Sankara and all this kind of stuff. Now, someone like, and I'm going to use Kwame Ture as an example, who kind of did this very well. Like, well enough, I would argue, to make his explanation, like he would always kind of revert back to history in terms of this person did this. So I'm kind of bringing that in terms of how I move. Like, he would always kind of bring back examples of people that he studied, he admired, he kind of looked up to, and kind of made a comparison of his contemporaries in, of his time to kind of bring those examples, but kind of bridge that gap into understanding, but kind of how he moved. Like, to me, this kind of seems very vague, like he's almost hiding something to me.
I mean, I think
concerns me a little.
And part of it could be lost in translation a little bit too. I think, to me, it's one of those things. If we're going to talk about corruption, you also have to talk about corruption of a single party, thing as well, and how you plan on keeping yourself from being easily corrupted.
Right.
Like that would be parts of it.
That was the other point that I wanted to make, because you're removing democracy now, for better or for worse. I'm not sure how the system works in Burkina Faso, but what are you going to use as far as the checks and balances for you?
Yeah.
Like, are you going to be leading with an authoritarian rule where basically wherever you say goes, and you're the buck stops with you? Because that's going to be and I'm sure he's just going to be fuck the West and what they think, but that's what people are going to ask you.
Yeah.
So so given in that, what systems are you going to put in place for you not to succumb to the corruption that you say that you're going to be rid of? That is a problem, regardless of whatever political system you're in. So or at least there's a danger of that. So what are you doing to protect yourself from that? Is kind of what I wish he would have answered or asked about.
So he made this speech kind of in coinciding with that, right? So, which I figured I'd read a translation of. So he starts, "Hello, comrades. It's been exactly 1 year to the day since we proclaimed the popular and progressive revolution right here. This took place during the days of patriotic engagement. This year, God willed that we celebrate this proclamation during those same days of patriotic engagement. Admittedly, last year's theme was about order and discipline. This year, the theme is more focused on local consumption, but in any case, order and discipline remain the foundation and the strength of a revolution. No revolution succeeds in disorder, anarchy, and indiscipline. The revolution is more than a necessity, it's an imperative necessity for us. No nation, especially the least developed in Africa, can claim to set itself on the path to development except through revolution. That is why I say that the revolution is an imperative necessity for us. And some people ask questions. What is the revolution? Especially our popular and progressive revolution. Indeed, for over a year now, many people have made efforts to teach the ideology, to convey the ideology, but we have decided to produce a manifesto that will be available in the coming days, in which the broad outlines of our revolution concerning several social areas of our homeland are inscribed. But beyond all this, the revolutionary is someone who must have several qualities. He is not the perfect man, but he must have qualities. I will dwell on these great qualities that a revolutionary must have. First, the revolutionary is one who loves his homeland and loves people, yearning for peace and justice. To love your homeland, you must love all those who live with you. Since you are not isolated in a forest or a desert, all alone, without any human being next to you, you must, in your behavior, in your language, through your actions, preach love around you, around your community, and especially with your compatriots. Beyond all that, you must love all the peoples of the world and yearn for peace and justice. Whoever speaks of love around oneself necessarily cultivates solidarity, mutual aid, and peace. These are values that a revolutionary must embody. Second, a revolutionary must seek knowledge. An ignorant person cannot be a revolutionary. Someone who stagnates, who is narrow-minded, cannot be a revolutionary. The revolutionary seeks knowledge because it is through knowledge that we revolutionize our lives. The revolutionary must seek to know history, know his roots, know his forefathers, his ancestors, where they come from, what was the interaction between his ancestors and the rest of the world. The revolutionary must coldly analyze the present, the actions and behaviors of all the peoples of the world leaders. He must analyze the present well and understand how he must behave in the future. This is why I often say that the revolutionary is the one who seeks to know history, who cross-references historical data with the present, be able to protect himself into the future. As long as you do not have this capacity to seek knowledge of your identity, your sources, your roots, to coldly analyze the present without emotion, you will not be able to project yourself into the future because you will never understand the world. The revolutionary is the one who seeks all types of knowledge through what we do every day, what we eat. We should seek to have scientific knowledge to reproduce what others may have already sought and found, or seek to create in order to participate in the life of our nation, to facilitate the lives of our citizens, our fellow citizens. So, no matter what, a revolutionary must seek knowledge, whether it is ideological, political, philosophical, whether it is scientific knowledge. The revolutionary in any case must not be an ignoramus. If you are a seller of glasses or you wear glasses as a revolutionary, you should therefore think about manufacturing these glasses here. If you wear imported shoes as a revolutionary, you must find the shoemakers and all those who sell those shoes so that we can create them here. If you are revolutionary and you carry a weapon, you must, no matter what, seek to manufacture the weapon here. This is the revolutionary spirit. Finally, the revolutionary is the one who remains firm against the people or leaders who seek to oppress him. The revolutionary firmly opposes the oppressor. He firmly opposes the one who seeks to dominate. He opposes imperialism. The revolutionary opposes the one who do not love his homeland. The revolutionary cannot love a traitor. That is a reality. And the revolutionary fights these imperialists and these traitors first and foremost through the power of ideas, the power of arguments, and how to have the power of idea of arguments. It is through the knowledge that he seeks and acquires before moving on to any other form of combat. Being a revolutionary is not an easy thing. It is not proclaimed. It is through your behavior and your actions that others will define you as a revolutionary. A revolutionary does not dwell on superficial subjects without seeking to know, to understand before speaking out. Knee-jerk reactions are not revolutionary. Emotional reactions to certain subjects are not revolutionary. It is a state of mind that must lead us to emerge from our underdevelopment, change our lives, improve our living conditions, and participate in improving the living conditions of all those who live around us whom we claim to love. Everywhere we must seek to make the revolution in the image of our fighting forces who are revolutionary. Since the beginning, we had been approached by several armies to help us with fighters in this relentless fight against terrorism, but due to our intrinsic values, we said no. We will fight as Burkina. By the way, I salute all those friends of Burkina Faso who are willing to help us in this fight, but through this revolutionary capacity of our fighting forces, we decided to fight as Burkina, and today we are winning the bet. The fighting forces are evolving well on the ground. We conquering the lands that were the enemy sanctuaries. We see them fleeing with their families, but we told these enemies at the end of the year that the message has changed. Flee Burkina Faso or die. No forest will be a hiding place. The forest will be furnaces for them. So, yeah, I mean...
Take a shot for every time you said revolutionary.
Revolutionary? I'd be fucking... My liver would not be able to fucking handle that. But, yeah, I mean... He had a bit more in this, but I can just skip it for time, I think. But... I have this. So this is from Long Live AES. As of 2026, Burkina Faso has had one president for 41% of the country's history. The same man that murdered Sankara had power for nearly 3 decades. The Traore government is the fourth coup leadership since Sankar's killer was overthrown in 2014. Nobody cared about democracy until AES. So, a supporter of the Traore government for sure, but we've mentioned Sankara a few times, right? And you were talking about, if he's listening to the teachings of Sankara at all, right? That would be a good thing to push. So this is what I think you have in mind. So we'll listen to Sankara a bit.
Qu'est-ce que la démocratie pour vous?
Je crois au peuple. Le peuple.
I believe in the people, and the people as strength,
Je crois
as a
comme une
strength, as a
force,
force.
comme une puissance. Celui qui sait parler au peuple.
If you can speak to the people, if you have the people's ear, you can achieve anything.
Non, parler au cœur du peuple.
Speak to the people's hearts so that they understand your ideas.
Élément très important aussi, c'est que
But our impression is also that
que chaque fois qu'on nous pose des
as
conditions,
soon as help from the IMF arrives,
créer d'autres conditions.
then other conditions are imposed on us. They say you can get this or that amount of money, but only if you do this or that. We fulfill their conditions,
On nous amène encore d'autres conditions.
and they set other conditions.
Cela devient troublant. Alors,
It's very troublesome. In which countries has the IMF been successful? In which places where the IMF has meddled has it really worked? Nowhere. Can you tell me why you have said no to receiving food aid? They have not helped us to develop. They have instead created a beggar mentality. We hold out our hands to receive food. That is not a good idea. Our farmers have stopped producing because they cannot sell what they produce. The surplus from farmers in other countries is brought in here. We want something else. Those who really want to help us can give us plows, tractors, fertilizer, insecticide, watering cans, drills, dams. That is how we should define food aid. Those who come with wheat, millet, corn, or milk, they are not helping us. They are fanning us up like you do with geese, stuffing them in order to be able to sell them later. That is not real help.
What a French idiom, too. Like, the stuffing of geese, Motherfucker that foie gras be good, though, don't it? Like, there is such a thing as ethical foie gras, as much as that it seems like an oxymoron, You just wait until they gorge themselves, the geese, and then you slaughter them. That's how it's ethical. You just don't force feed them. Like, but anyway, that's what I imagined you had, when he was asked about democracy, right?
Yeah, but so I think, again, this could be his age.
Yeah.
And given, I wouldn't say lack of political prowess, but like you can argue he's growing into it. But if he's using Sankara as a model, make the case. Because again, if Burkina Faso, especially among the older generation, will know who he is. So if you're able to make that case, I think people will have an easier time, in Africa at least, what Traore is trying to do. The problem, and I can only make that assumption given what we've said on the show before about him based on other things we have read. The problem is, again, like, fuck the West, because they're not going to give a damn who Sankara is, so this isn't really applicable to them. But however, it's still important for those who care to make that association, because otherwise people are going to, and again, Traore is not going to care what the West is going to say about him. They're going to do whatever they want. But easily his message is going to be so misconstrued that people like and honestly, also too, a lot of Africans are also going to misconstrue what he says. That to me is way more important.
For sure.
Because things have become so westernized now that they're not going to immediately think of Sankara, or if they are, they're not going to say it publicly.
Yeah.
Because they know how much of a public figure Sankara was, and probably still is. And again, with the youth, they're going to be like, especially if they may not know, it's like, who is this guy? And they kind of look him up. It's like, oh God, like he actually did stuff with people, like, so again, my thing is make the case, use the examples that you claim to have read or follow, that people are able to make that easier association. Otherwise, it's just kind of like, no offense, it kind of comes up like Trump. In terms of, I'm going to do this for me. Like, this is only about me. Rather, no, I'm following in the footsteps of what the people before me have done. I'm just trying to fulfill what they couldn't due to imperialism. And hell, I'll say it, because the West murked them. Because they were actually trying to do something to the people. And I don't care if I get murked. I want to make sure that I finish what they started. Like, if he kind of said it in that way, I can buy into what he's selling a little bit more. But right now, it's just speculation, given what he said, which again is vague.
Which, if we're speculating, you mentioned things like Ubuntu, the concept of which I've actually heard before, surprisingly, mainly because of the Linux derivative. But I have heard of it. It's similar to like Uhuru, right? It's that what's the tribe of origin?
I would argue basically,
I forgot
off the top of my head, but basically, if you think of it in terms of what Africans are traditionally known for, is working toward the collective good, I would say it's a version of socialism. That's, I think, the easiest way to say it.
Yeah.
Like,
it's all things are connected, all humans are connected, that kind of thing. Like, but you put in Mandela explaining it, right? Yeah, we'll let him.
As a personification of Ubuntu, what do you understand Ubuntu to be?
In the old days when we were young, a traveler through a country would stop at a village and he didn't have to ask for food or for water. Once he stops, the people give him food, entertain him. That is one aspect of Ubuntu, but it will have various aspects.
Respect, helpfulness, sharing.
Yeah, here all.
Respect, helpfulness, sharing, community, caring, trust, unselfishness. One word can mean so much.
Ubuntu does not mean that people should not enrich themselves. The question, therefore, is, are you going to do so in order to enable the community around you to be able to improve? These are the important things in life. And if one can do that, you have done something very important which will be appreciated.
I think it's important to say, because the word Ubuntu cannot be, it's not translatable in English.
Yeah.
So
you have to use a bunch of words to translate it.
Right. It's one of those words where it's very hard to translate. So, but again, if I had to, again, if you have to make the attempt, it's a form of socialism, as I said, to work towards the common good of humanity, if you want to kind of put it at a very basic level. So I brought this up because this is what people online, and myself included, kind of allude to what Traore is thinking.
Yeah.
In terms of, if he's trying to dissolve democracy, is he trying to move towards this traditional means of care within Burkina Faso? Again, we don't know because he has not communicated as such and he hasn't presented that as much.
Yeah.
So this is speculation on my part. But and again, I think this is worthwhile. I wanted to bring that up because again, we're very mixed on Traore, but a lot of the stuff, assuming if what I'm saying is correct, the West is not going to get it anyway.
No.
So because we don't think in that way here. We think, I think, therefore I am. Very much enlightenment mode. So it's not going to translate well in the West because we normally don't think that way. We think about ourselves as the rugged individualists, the capitalists that just takes whatever we can get, every man fends for himself, and screw everyone else. You know, it's the survival of the fittest. Whereas if you look at African society in the traditional sense, it's the idea of like, I am because we are, and we are because I am. So your identity is tied to the group and anyone who joins your group. So it's like the idea of like, so all your resources are essentially not your own.
Right.
It's essentially tied to the community that you're a part of, or your tribe or clan within you. So again, if Traore is thinking of that model in terms of restoring, if he's talking about the revolution here in terms of Ubuntu, then that makes sense.
Right.
But
well,
again,
we'll
we don't
see.
know. Or does he have it?
When he puts out that, people put out the manifesto, we'll look into that. You know,
Right.
and this is definitely going to be developing, I'm sure, because I don't think he's just getting rid of the voice of the people by any means. You know, I would hate to see that because to me, that's like, we've seen that before where we install some leader that everyone thinks is good and then he takes away, you know, ability of the people to push back on if he gets corrupted and then becomes corrupted and does the bidding of the US. I hope that doesn't happen, you know?
Right.
So
I did bring in the tweet that Dwayne Wrong Omamale wrote regarding this. And we actually interviewed him last summer. So he says, actually, he kind of defines it better than I did. But the concept of Ubuntu is one which represents a philosophy which is common in many African cultures, which is the philosophy that our existence, I guess it's existence he meant, as humans is interconnected. Too often we allow the communal values of our culture to be replaced by counterproductive individualism, which again could imply this is what Traore is trying to resist from. So Dwayne continues, I think he was responding to a person here. I didn't do that tweet, but he responded, I understand that, which is why I've been explaining that an African social political worldview is different from a Western one. As another commenter pointed out, Africans have concepts like Ubuntu, which I said before does not exist in the English language. So I think we can summarize that assuming if Traore is trying to return to the Ubuntu style of government, okay, but my question is, again, if he's trying to tie this back to the community, or in his case, the community in terms of his country, there's going to be a need of checks and balances.
Yeah.
As the leader, who's going to do that? Like, so even within that, there's going to be I have questions still. Because it's not going to look like in the way of maybe our ancestors back several centuries ago when they had this style. And again, this was the idea within a tribe or a clan.
Yeah.
Or maybe even a kingdom, I would argue. This is in the form of I wouldn't say westernized country, but a modernized world where this idea really doesn't exist in the same way anymore. So my question along with that is, if you are trying to implement Ubuntu, how are you going to remix it in a way that makes sense to Africans today?
Yeah.
How you plan to implement that? And again, as we said, how are you going to protect yourself from the corruption that you say you want to get rid of?
Right.
So again, I think, just to summarize, I think we have to go into this with a lot of nuance because there's a lot that we don't know and have to speculate. But I felt it was important to kind of bring this in because otherwise I feel it would be a very narrow or very superficial view of what people might believe. I think you could see that just given what he said, that people are just like, oh, he's going to be like Trump or whatever. I don't want to necessarily assume that. I do think, though, it is a possibility, but we have to look at it other angles before we make that judgment. And I think the only way that we can see for sure is continue watching and kind of seeing what he does or how he moves moving forward.
Yep. Agreed. I'm with you. That's pretty much was my thoughts on the matter too. So, but I felt like it was important to bring up and discuss just because we have no idea what's going to be coming up with that continent, going into the future. So, but talking about that continent frequently puts us in the shadow banned category. So if you want to make sure YouTube doesn't get 30% of your money when you want to donate to us, go to ko-fi.com/Indie News Network and scan that QR code on your screen. And we appreciate all the dollary dues. But mainly just like and subscribe, share the video, leave a comment. Let me know what you think. How, what's your take on this no democracy being called from Traore? But otherwise, thanks for watching. All right, I saw some little gators in the chat.
Just had a lot to say during this. We're not going to read all of your stuff. But we'll read some of what you said.
Yeah.
He did say, my first language is French. The translation was accurate for starters. Great.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's always useful to know. Especially with AI crap these days. You can put whatever captions you want on anything. So
auspicious again. I don't think he's completely squashing democracy, or at least I hope not. I think he sees the parliamentary proceedings to be wasteful.
That makes sense to me too. That he's not going to take out the complete system. He was just removing the political parties from that system. I don't know. I'd have to go look at specifically how their government works right now. So, but
he continues, I might be wrong, but I think Burkina Faso has a good leader that will look after the interests of the people and not be a sellout to the West. Well, again, he's done the stuff that we agree with that, but to what point?
Yeah.
Like we don't fully know his full intentions. Now, again, to be fair, the media is not. There's
kind
not
to him
a lot
either.
of media coverage on him.
And if it is, it's not kind.
That.
Right.
Right. But also, he's just one man. So
yep.
He could say a lot of stuff in rhetoric, but not necessarily implement that in practice. So far, in terms of ousting France, yes. But what does that mean in terms of caring for his people? That we don't know yet. So it's just a matter of waiting and seeing what amounts to that. So again, nuance. Kit's in the chat. Shout out to you, Kit. Thank you for being here.
Yes, sir. Kameshwari Kate, the revolutionary will not be televised. Gil Scott Heron. I did have to say revolutionary about 1,800 times. I bet that sounds better in French, though. I bet it rolls off the tongue a little better in French.
Revolutionnaire.
Yeah. But you have an extra story for us, correct?
I do. Shout out to Indy for this because he knows me well. You too. Anything regarding children, as that's my job, is kind of my love language and kind of something that I want to talk about. I'll usually always talk about because children get no voice, have no voice at all. But I think going back to Iran and Gaza, and we've done God knows how many stories how children have been affected or will be affected given war and genocide. And I haven't done one in a while, so not to say I want to make you all depressed as our last story for the evening before we close out, but I think it is important to remember wars have consequences. And at the end of the day, it's the children who are in these countries who suffer the most. So this story is from, I'm soon antiwar.com curated this story.
Ramsey Baroud.
Article from Ramsey Baroud, who writes, from Gaza to Mnar, the same story, children paying the price of war. So he writes, those who had the misfortune of growing up in a war zone required no explanation. War is hell, it is true, but for children, it is something else entirely. A confusing, disorienting fate that defies comprehension. There are children who live only briefly, experiencing whatever life manages to offer them, the love of parents, the camaraderie of siblings, the fragile joys and inevitable hardships of existence. There are over 20,000 children in this category who have been killed in Gaza over the span of roughly 2 years, according to the figures released by the Gaza Health Ministry and repeatedly cited by United Nations agencies. Some were born and killed within the same short time frame. Others remain buried beneath the rubble of the destroyed strip. According to humanitarian and forensic experts cited by United Nations Office for the Coordination and Humanitarian Affairs, thousands of bodies are still missing under collapsed buildings, with recovery efforts hindered by the scale of destruction and lack of equipment. In some cases, extreme heat, fire, and the use of heavy explosive weaponry have rendered identification nearly impossible, meaning that many of these children may never be properly accounted for, let alone mourned at a grave. These children will not have graves to be visited, and if they do, many will have no living parents left to pray for them. But we will always do. And then there are those who are wounded and maimed, tens of thousands of them. Visiting Amro, the wounded son of a relative who perished along with his entire family in Gaza, I witnessed one of the most heartbreaking sights one could ever possibly endure: the wounded and maimed children of Gaza in a Turkish hospital. There were a few teenagers, many without limbs. Hospital staff have adorned them with the beloved Palestinian keffiyeh. Those who could flash the victory sign, and those who had no arms raised what remained of their limbs, as if to tell every wandering visitor that they stand for something deep and unyielding, that their losses were not in vain. But then there were the little ones who experienced trauma without fully comprehending even the magnitude of their tragedy. They stared in confusion at everyone, the unfamiliar faces, the incomprehensible languages spoken around them, the empty walls. My nephew kept speaking of his parents, who were meant to visit him any day. They were both gone, along with his only brother. I was in kindergarten in a refuge camp in Gaza when I witnessed my first military raid. The target was our school. I still recall our teachers pushing back against soldiers as they forced their way into the building. I remember them being physically assaulted, screaming at us to run toward the orchard. We began running while holding hands with one another. We were all wearing and matching red outfits with stickers on our faces. None of us had any understanding of who these men were or why they were hurting the people who cared for us. If the killing of children in Gaza, Lebanon, Syria, Iran, and across the Middle East is normalized, then it will just become another accepted feature of war. And since war is hell, we will all move along, accepting that our children, anywhere in the world, now stand on the front lines of victimhood whenever it suits the calculations of war. I've thought about this often in recent years, during the devastation of Gaza, the wars across the region, and the killing of students at a school in the Iranian city of Mnar. Mnar is not just an Iranian tragedy, it is our collective loss. Evidence from international investigations indicates that the strike on the Shahare Tabeye school was not an accident, but the result of deliberate targeting within a broader military campaign. Amnesty International concluded that the school building was directly struck with guided weapons. Investigations by major outlets alongside U.S. military sources suggest the site had been placed on a target list despite it being a functioning school. The result was devastating. Children killed, families shattered, and yet another atrocity absorbed into the relentless rhythm of war. The U.S. administration may deny intent as often as it wishes, but we know that the killing of children is not incidental. It is evidence in Gaza where the scale alone defies any claim of accident. As UNICEF Executive Director Catherine Russell stated, Gaza has become a graveyard for thousands of children. That reality alone should end any debate. I could pause here to tell you that all children are precious, that all lives are sacred, and that international law is unequivocal on this matter. I could invoke the Fourth Geneva Convention, which states that protected persons shall at all times be humanely treated, and that violence against civilians is strictly prohibited. Yes, I could do all of that, but I feel it will make little difference. Everything we have said and done has failed Gaza, Lebanon, Syria, and much of our region. International law, once seen as a shield, has become little more than a point of departure for conversations about its ineffectiveness and hypocrisy. Speaking to Palestinians about international law often generates not reassurance, but frustration and anger. So I will spare you that too. Instead, I want to make a call to the world. A call on behalf of Amro and the many others from our family who were killed, and the thousands more who perish. A call on behalf of the frightening children in the Flowers Kindergarten in my old refuge camp in Gaza. Please, do not allow them to normalize the killing of children. Do not settle for indifference or mere concern, or even moral outrage that is never followed by action. And I think that's a great one to end tonight. Not just children, but all of humanity. That when we see injustice, that we don't turn away, but we engage in it in our best way to ensure that lives can be spared at minimum. But again, it's very hard for me to kind of read that, especially in light of children, like who don't have a say generally in society, that their voices are not heard at all. And as Rami said, like there's going to be tens of thousands of children that we're not going to know the names of, that will be essentially forgotten. So that's a hard pill to swallow, especially since that's again, given what Dr. CBS said in that tweet earlier tonight, this is not Trump's war. This is our collective stance as a country. And if we call ourselves a Christian nation that cares about children, allegedly, we care about them in utero, but we don't give a damn about them once they're out. We own this. And we should be embarrassed and ashamed that we call ourselves, whatever we want in terms of caring for children, all this kind of stuff, and we don't even care for our own children in this damn country, much less, in the global south or anywhere else in the world. So, it's kind of hypocritical on our part to say that we claim that we want to care for children, especially among trans issues and all that kind of stuff, when we're actively killing them in other countries and here due to our policies that don't protect them.
Yep.
So
just
a little perspective tonight in terms of what we're doing. and how we're complicit in it.
Yeah. Words are not enough sometimes, you know?
I mean, yeah, what more needs to be said?
Yeah.
For something like this. I mean, like that should be the perspective that we all have, moving forward. So, there are a lot of people who will choose to ignore, or I've even heard people say regarding Gaza, oh, like, I don't care about Gaza. I care about what's happening in our country. Well, fine. Care for our children here too.
Yeah.
Care enough for our children here too. Because they're going through similar shit. So, and you're not doing that either. So what's your moral stance? So, again, just my perspective. I'm just a teacher who works with them every day and tries to care for them as best as I can every day. So maybe I'm just, I don't know what you would call it, but maybe I'm just sensitive to that issue. But I feel like I'm sensitive for the right reasons. Because we're not giving our children any reason to live, given what we're doing. We may not have a world that they're able to live in, before too long, if we're not careful. So, again, food for thought if we want to exist beyond our lives to ensure that our children have a life once they become our age. But regardless, talking about stories like these is why we're heavily suppressed on YouTube. So if you want to support us to maybe find favor with the YouTube gods and to ensure that all of your money is being given towards our channel and the network, you can scan the QR code you see on the screen, or you can go to the Ko-fi link you see at the bottom of your screen. And if you're in the YouTube chat and you're live, you can type in !donate and the Ko-fi link will pop up. If you want to give, you can also that way. You can also give via Cash App, PayPal, Substack, and Patreon if you want to, especially if you want to give monthly. And as we keep saying, times are tough. So if you can give money, great. If not, also great. At minimum, like and subscribe. And be sure to share this clip with friends. Just help them remember what our collective work is doing in other countries, especially for the children who are being hurt by our tax dollars. Remind them of that.
Yep.
And thanks for watching.
Well, that's our show.
Kind of an abysmal way to end, but
I've done
what's happening this week.
Similar stories. It was like it was either that or how rats in Gaza are eating people. Like children. That was the other bad children's story this week. So, just rainbows and sunshine everywhere, right? Indy in the chat saying fuck Israel, and also reminding people to tune in tomorrow for him and Jesse for American Tradition. Should be Angel over the weekend, and we'll hang out Sunday for boats. Check that out on the Ocho. So we always post updates at Get Indie News on Twitter, as well as our website and Substack. Links in the description below. Anything you want to tell people before we head out of here, Care Bear?
Thank you. We love you. Thank you for supporting us and riding with us. And keep watching us.
So, remember, kids, labels are bad. Stay independent. Good night, fam.
Have a good week, everyone.
There's a difference between peace and liberation, is there not? You can have injustice and have peace. Isn't that correct? Have peace and be enslaved.
Yes.
So peace isn't the answer.
No.
Liberation is the answer.